Hey there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I've put together a new collection of interesting stories, so whether you're here to relax, fall asleep, or just listen in the background, this should be a good one. Feel free to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, let's start with the first story. It is titled,
My wife said, "My friends think you're not impressive enough for me. I should aim higher." I replied, "Then go ahead." That same day, I canceled the trips, the ring, the birthday venue, everything quietly. 2 weeks later, at 4 a.m., her closest friend called me crying. "Please pick up. Something happened at the birthday party, and it's about you." If you've ever heard the person you love reduce you to a footnote in someone else's conversation, you know the sound your heart makes when it stops believing in its own worth. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were our night. The one evening we both carved out of our schedules to cook together, to sit across from each other at the small dining table in our apartment to pretend we were still the people who'd fallen in love 4 years ago. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary. I'd spent an hour on the chicken getting the skin crispy the way she liked it, the way her mother used to make it before she passed. The table was set, 2 wine glasses, cloth napkins I'd ironed that morning before work. Candles because she'd once told me candlelight made her feel like we were in a movie. She walked in at 7:30, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something I couldn't hear. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. Designer heels, the ones I'd bought her for her promotion 6 months ago. She barely glanced at the table as she passed it. Still talking, still laughing. I stood there with the serving spoon in my hand, watching her disappear into the bedroom, her voice carrying through the apartment like music I was no longer invited to hear. "I know, right?" That's what I said. "He's sweet, but the butt hung in the air like smoke." I set the spoon down carefully. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected them to shake, to betray the way my chest was tightening, the way my throat was closing around words I didn't know how to say. But they were steady, calm, like they already knew something I didn't. She came back 10 minutes later, phone finally silent, tucked into the back pocket of her jeans. She smiled at me, the smile she used when she was about to ask for something or when she was trying to smooth over a rough edge she'd created. "Sorry about that," she said, sliding into her chair. "Manda was having a crisis. You know how she gets." I nodded, poured her wine, served her plate first, the way I always did. She took a bite, made a pleased sound, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe the butt had been about something else. Someone else. "This is really good," she said. "You've perfected it." "Thanks. You should cook more often. You're better at it than I am." I smiled. It felt like a mask. "You've been busy. God, you have no idea." She took a long sip of wine, leaned back in her chair. "Work has been insane, and planning this birthday thing is taking over my life. I swear Amanda and the girls have opinions about everything. The venue, the theme, the guest list. It's exhausting. Her birthday 3 weeks away. I'd been planning it for months. A surprise trip to the coast. The boutique hotel she'd bookmarked on Instagram. The dinner reservation at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. I'd bought the ring 2 months ago. Platinum, a single diamond, simple and elegant, the kind she'd pointed out in a jewelry store window last spring when she thought I wasn't paying attention. "I'm sure it'll be perfect," I said. "It has to be." She leaned forward, her eyes bright with something I couldn't name. Excitement, anxiety. "Everyone's going to be there. My whole friend group, some people from work. It's going to be this whole thing. Sounds like a lot of pressure." "It is." She paused, pushed her food around her plate. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. The way she said it, "talk to you about something." The careful neutrality of it. The way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I knew that tone. It was the tone people used when they were about to deliver bad news and wanted you to think it was for your own good. "Okay," I said. She took another sip of wine, set the glass down, looked at me. "So, the girls have been asking about you, about us, and I've been thinking. I don't know how to say this without sounding awful. Just say it." She exhaled slowly, like she was releasing something she'd been holding on to for too long. "They don't think you're impressive enough for me." The words landed between us like stones dropped into still water. Heavy, final, rippling outward. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My brain was trying to process what I'd just heard, trying to arrange the words into something that made sense. But they kept sliding apart, refusing to form a coherent thought. "I mean, they love you," she continued quickly, as if that made it better. "They think you're sweet and kind and, stable, but they think I could do better, that I should aim higher. Higher, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. You know what I mean? Someone more ambitious. Someone with more presence, I guess. Someone who makes an impression when they walk into a room. I looked at her across the table. This woman I'd loved for 4 years. This woman I'd built a life with. This woman whose opinion I'd valued above almost anyone else's. And I realized I was looking at a stranger, someone who could sit in candlelight eating a meal I'd spent an hour preparing and tell me I wasn't enough while her friends' voices echoed in her head like a Greek chorus. And what do you think? I asked. My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. She hesitated. I think they might have a point. There it was. The thing she'd been circling around. The thing she dressed up in other people's opinions so she wouldn't have to claim it as her own. But I heard it now, clear as a bell. She agreed with them. Had maybe always agreed with them. I see. I said, don't be like that. Her voice took on an edge, defensive now. I'm just being honest. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Be honest with each other. You're right. I said, honesty is important. She relaxed slightly, mistaking my agreement for acceptance. I knew you'd understand. You're so understanding. That's one of the things I love about you. But I think I need to explore what else is out there. See if there's someone who's more aligned with where I'm going in life. The candles flickered between us. Outside, I could hear traffic, the distant wail of a siren, the ordinary sounds of a city going about its ordinary evening. Inside, something was ending. Something was shifting. The tectonic plates of my life were moving, grinding against each other. And when they settled, the landscape would be different. Then go ahead, I said. She blinked. What? Go ahead. Aim higher. Explore. Find someone more impressive. Are you breaking up with me? I almost laughed. Almost. No, you're breaking up with me. I'm just agreeing with you. That's not what I said. I just think we need to talk about this, about where we're going. We just did. I stood up, began clearing the plates. She was still sitting there, her wine glass half full, her expression caught somewhere between confusion and offense. I think we're done talking. You're being dramatic. Am I? I turned to look at her. Really look at her. Tried to find the woman I'd fallen in love with and the woman sitting at my table wearing my gift, telling me I wasn't good enough. Couldn't find her. Maybe she'd never existed. Maybe I'd been in love with a fiction, a projection, a story I'd told myself about who we were. I just think I know what you think. Your friends made it pretty clear and you agreed. So, let's not drag this out. You want someone more impressive? Go find them. I won't stand in your way. She stood up too, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine, maybe I will. Good luck, I said. Meant it too in the way you wish someone luck when you know they're about to learn a lesson the hard way. She grabbed her purse, her phone, her keys. Hesitated at the door like she was waiting for me to stop her, to call her back, to apologize for not being impressive enough. When I didn't, she left. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like finality. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after she left, staring at the candles burning down, the wine glasses, the dinner I'd made. Then I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and started making phone calls. The Coastal Hotel canceled. Full refund. They were very understanding. The restaurant reservation canceled. The surprise helicopter tour I'd booked canceled. The birthday venue she thought I didn't know about. The one she'd been planning with her friends. The one I'd put a deposit on 2 months ago because she'd mentioned it offhandedly and I'd wanted to surprise her. I kept that one, but I made some changes. Added a few guests to the list. Made a note about the timing. Then I opened the drawer in my desk, pulled out the ring box, and set it on top of a file folder I'd been keeping for the last 6 months. The folder was thick. Documentation, proof, numbers that told a story she didn't know I'd been writing. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner. Board meeting moved to next week. They want the full presentation. Are you ready? I looked at the ring, at the folder, at the remnants of a life I'd been living in the shadows because I thought it was what she wanted. Stability, predictability, someone who didn't make waves, more than ready, I typed back. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Slept better than I had in months. Because sometimes the truth is this. When someone shows you who they really are, when they tell you exactly what they think of you, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is believe them. And then quietly, methodically, without drama or declaration, you build the life they said you weren't capable of living. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for everything to change. For the carefully constructed narrative she'd built about us, about me, about who was impressive and who wasn't to come crashing down. 2 weeks until her friend called me at 4 in the morning crying. 2 weeks until the truth saw out the eye, elegant, data-backed, undeniable finally came to light. But that night, standing in my apartment with the candles burning down to nothing. I didn't know any of that yet. I just knew that something had ended. And something else, something quieter and more powerful had begun. The morning after she left, I woke up to silence, not the comfortable silence of shared space. The kind where you can hear someone breathing in the next room, and it feels like home. This was different, empty. The apartment felt larger somehow, like the walls had expanded overnight to fill the void she'd created. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the grief to hit, for the regret, for that crushing weight of loss that's supposed to follow when someone you love walks away. It never came. Instead, what I felt was clarity, sharp, clean, like I'd been living in fog for years, and someone had finally turned on a light. I got out of bed, made coffee, and opened my laptop. There was work to do. If you've ever had to untangle yourself from someone else's life, you know it's not dramatic. It's administrative. A series of small, methodical steps that add up to a separation so complete it's like you were never connected at all. People think breakups are all tears and shouting matches and thrown belongings. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're just this quiet clicks on a keyboard, phone calls made in a steady voice. Boxes checked one after another until the shared life you built becomes two separate existences again. I started with the apartment. It was in my name, had been since before we met. She'd moved in 2 years ago, brought her clothes and her books and her opinions about where the furniture should go, but the lease had always been mine. I called the landlord, asked about the early termination clause, told him I'd be moving at the end of the month. He was surprised. I'd been a model tenant for 5 years, but he didn't ask questions. Said he'd start showing the place next week. Next, utilities, subscriptions, the streaming services she'd added to my accounts, all transferred or canceled. I went through my phone, deleted the photos, not out of anger, but out of necessity. Why keep evidence of something that never really existed? The woman in those photos, smiling at holiday dinners, laughing on beach vacations, kissing me at midnight on New Year's Eve, she wasn't real. She was a performance. A version of herself she'd shown me while keeping the real her. The one who listened to her friends' assessments of my worth and agreed, hidden just beneath the surface. My phone buzzed. A text from her. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long moment, imagined the conversation. Her wanting to explain, to contextualize, to tell me I'd misunderstood or overreacted. Her asking if we could work through this now that she'd had time to think. Her expecting me to be there waiting, ready to be convinced that I was enough after all. I deleted the message, blocked the number. Then I called my lawyer. "Mark," I said when he picked up, "I need to move some things around. Can you meet today?" "Of course. 11 work for you?" "Perfect." Mark Chen had been my attorney for 3 years since I'd started the company. He was expensive, precise, and discreet. 3 qualities I valued highly, especially now. His office was in one of those glass towers downtown, the kind with marble floors and receptionists who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I'd always met him there after work. Never during business hours. Never when she might ask questions about where I was going. Because here's the thing about the life I'd been living. She knew one version of it. The version I showed her. Steady job, middle management, comfortable salary, predictable, safe, unimpressive. What she didn't know was that 2 years ago, my friend David and I had started a software company. A small thing at first, just the two of us working nights and weekends building a platform for data analytics that we thought might be useful to mid-sized businesses. We'd bootstrapped it, kept our day jobs, treated it like a side project that might amount to something or might fizzle out like most startups do. Then 6 months ago, it stopped being a side project. A Fortune 500 company had reached out. They wanted to license our software, wanted to integrate it into their entire operation, wanted to talk about an acquisition. The numbers they mentioned made my head spin. We'd taken the licensing deal, kept the company independent, and suddenly our side project was generating revenue in the 7 figures. I'd wanted to tell her, had planned to tell her actually, as part of the birthday surprise, imagined her face when I explained that the middle management job was cover, that I'd been building something real, that the modest lifestyle we led was a choice, not a limitation. Imagine proposing to her with the ring and the truth that we could have whatever life she wanted, go wherever she dreamed of going, build whatever future she could imagine. But that conversation required trust, required believing that the person you were revealing yourself to would meet that vulnerability with grace. And somewhere along the way, without me quite noticing when it happened, I'd stopped trusting her with the parts of me that mattered. Mark was waiting when I arrived, a coffee already prepared the way I liked it. He shook my hand, gestured to the chair across from his desk. The office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And from this height, everything looked small, manageable. "So," he said, settling into his chair. "What's going on?" "I need to separate my assets, move some things into different accounts, make sure everything's protected." He raised an eyebrow. "Personal matter. Relationship ended." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Common law situation." "No, we never got that far." I pulled out a folder, different from the one at home, but equally important. "But I need to make sure there's no financial entanglement. No paper trail that connects us." "Was she aware of the company?" "No." He nodded slowly, understanding without me having to explain. "Then this should be straightforward. I'll draw up the documentation. Move your personal assets into a separate trust. Your share of the company is already protected under the LLC structure, but we can add another layer if you want." "I want." We spent the next hour going through details, account numbers, property, investments I'd made over the years that had appreciated significantly. Mark took notes in his precise handwriting, asked clarifying questions, never once suggested I was being paranoid or petty. He just did his job, which was to protect what I'd built. "One more thing," I said as we were wrapping up. "There's a birthday party in 2 weeks, Saturday the 15th. I put a deposit on the venue. You want to cancel?" "No, I want to keep it, but I need to make some adjustments to the booking." He looked at me carefully. "What kind of adjustments?" I told him. His expression didn't change, but I saw the slight curl of his lips, the professional appreciation of a well-constructed plan. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "That's elegant," he said. "Possibly therapeutic, definitely effective. Will it work legally?" "You're not doing anything illegal. You're hosting an event you paid for, inviting people you have the right to invite, and presenting information that's factually accurate. Can't see a problem with that." "Good." I left his office feeling lighter. Not happy exactly, but purposeful. Like I was finally moving in a direction I'd chosen rather than one I'd defaulted into. The elevator descended 40 floors, and with each floor I felt more like myself. The self I'd been before had started measuring my worth by someone else's standards. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Mr. Castellan?" A woman's voice. "Professional." "Yes. This is Rebecca from Highlands Resort. I'm calling to confirm your reservation for the weekend of the 22nd. The coastal suite package with the dinner reservations. The surprise trip. I'd forgotten about that one. Actually, I need to cancel that." "What's the refund policy?" "You booked the premium package, which is fully refundable up to 48 hours before check-in. I can process that for you now if you'd like." "Please." There was a pause. The sound of typing. "All set. You'll see the refund in 3 to 5 business days. I'm sorry you won't be able to make it. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, that's all. Thank you." I hung up, stood on the sidewalk outside Mark's building, and felt the afternoon sun on my face. November in the city, but still warm enough that people were out in shirt sleeves. Still bright enough that the light hit the glass towers and turned them into mirrors reflecting the sky. That night, I went to the office. Not the office where I maintained my middle management cover, but the real one, the warehouse space in the arts district that David and I had converted into our headquarters. Exposed brick, standing desks, whiteboards covered in diagrams and code. 6 employees now, all of them smart and hungry and building something that mattered. David looked up when I walked in. "Hey, thought you weren't coming in today. Change of plans." He studied my face. Read something there that made him set down his coffee. "What happened?" I told him. Not all of it, but enough. The conversation at dinner, the friend's opinions, her agreement, the decision to end it. He listened without interrupting. The way good friends do when they know you just need to say the words out loud. "I'm sorry, man," he said when I finished. "That's brutal." "It is what it is." "You okay?" "Better than I expected to be, actually." He nodded, pulled up a chair. "So what now? You finally going to stop hiding this place from people?" I told David from the beginning why I was keeping the company quiet. Had explained about wanting to build something real before announcing it. About not wanting the attention or the pressure or the way people change when they knew you had money. He'd understood, had agreed to keep it between us and our small team. But I knew he thought I was being overly cautious, that I should be proud of what we'd built. Maybe he was right. "Yeah," I said. "I think it's time." "About damn time," he grinned. "We've got that board meeting next week. The investors are ready to talk second round funding. We could be looking at 10 times current valuation. I know that means I know what it means, David." He leaned back, his grin widening. "So, you're going to finally stop living like a monk and buy yourself something nice?" I thought about the apartment I was leaving, the carefully modest lifestyle I'd maintained, the way I'd kept myself small to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. Thought about the ring in my desk drawer, the plans I'd made, the future I'd imagined with someone who'd been imagining a different future entirely. Maybe, I said. First, I need to close some doors. The birthday party. The birthday party. He whistled low. Man, I don't envy her when the truth comes out. It's not about making her suffer. It's about correcting the record. Sure, Hen said in the tone of someone who didn't quite believe me, but respected my right to frame it however I wanted. Well, whatever you need from me, you have got it. The next 2 weeks moved like water, steady, inexorable. I went to work, both works, and lived in the space between my old life and whatever was coming next. She tried calling a few more times from different numbers. I never answered. She showed up at the apartment once, but I'd already moved most of my things out. She stood in the hallway looking at the half-empty living room, and I could see her trying to understand what was happening. You're really doing this? She asked. I am. Over one conversation, one disagreement. It wasn't a disagreement. It was a revelation. She shook her head, her eyes bright with something that looked like tears, but might have been anger. You're being childish, throwing away 4 years because your feelings got hurt. I could have argued, could have explained that it wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about fundamental incompatibility, about the realization that the person I loved didn't actually exist. But what would be the point? She'd already decided who I was, what I was worth. Nothing I said would change that. Goodbye, I said instead and closed the door. The night before her birthday party, I couldn't sleep. Lay in my new apartment, a high-rise downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place I'd always wanted but never thought I could afford until I remembered I could, and watched the city lights. Thought about what tomorrow would bring. The venue, the guests, the moment when everything I'd kept hidden would finally be visible. My phone buzzed at 3:47 a.m. unknown number, but this time from a contact I recognized. Amanda, her best friend. One of the voices in that chorus telling her I wasn't impressive enough. I let it ring, then ring again. On the third call, curiosity got the better of me. Please pick up. She was crying, her voice breaking. Please, Vu. Something happened at the birthday party setup and it's about you. You need to know before tomorrow. Please. I closed my eyes, felt the weight of what I'd said in motion settling over me like snow. I'm listening, I said. Amanda's voice on the phone was ragged, broken by sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside her chest. I could hear music in the background, laughter, the ambient noise of a party in full swing, which meant she'd stepped outside to make this call, which meant whatever she had to say, she didn't want an audience for it. Please, she said again. Please, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. None of us knew. I sat up in bed, the city lights casting shadows across the walls of my new apartment. Amanda, slow down. What are you talking about? The venue, the party. We're here for the final walkthrough before tomorrow. And she broke off crying harder. They showed us the seating chart, the guest list, and your name was on it, not as her +1, as the host. Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. I don't understand what that means, she said. But I could hear in her voice that she was starting to, that the pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture she didn't want to see. She told us she was hosting, that she'd planned everything, but the venue manager kept thanking you, kept saying how generous it was, what you were doing, and then she showed us the invoice. I closed my eyes. Here it was. The moment when the careful architecture I'd built started to become visible. What did the invoice say? Everything. Her voice was barely a whisper now. The deposit you put down 3 months ago, the premium package, the one she told us was a good deal she'd negotiated. The bar service, the catering, the DJ, it's all in your name. You paid for everything. I did. But she said Amanda stopped, started again. She told us she was funding this herself, that she'd been saving, that it was her party, her money, her event. She let us think you weren't even invited. I wasn't, I said. She uninvited me 2 weeks ago when she decided I wasn't impressive enough. The sound Amanda made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Oh God. Oh God. That conversation. We were at dinner. We were talking about guys, about relationships, and I said, I know what you said. She told me. I didn't mean it like that. I swear we were being stupid, talking trash the way friends do. I didn't think she'd actually take it seriously, agree with you, use it as a reason to end a 4-year relationship. My voice was calm, but I could feel something cold and hard forming in my chest. Not anger exactly, something more like resignation. She did all of those things, Amanda. So, whatever you're calling to apologize for whatever guilt you're feeling, you should probably feel it. She was fully crying now. Those deep shuddering sobs that hurt to listen to. I'm so sorry. We were wrong. We were so wrong. And now the venue manager is asking about tomorrow. About whether you're still planning to attend. And I don't know what to tell her. I don't know what to tell anyone. I stood up, walked to the window. 43 floors below, the city was alive with movement, cars streaming down streets, lights flickering in windows, people living their lives with no idea that mine was about to fundamentally change. I thought about the venue, the party, the carefully orchestrated reveal I'd planned. Thought about walking away from it, letting her have her birthday, her celebration, her version of events where I was the forgettable ex who wasn't impressive enough. But that would be a lie. And I was done living inside other people's lives. Tell her I'll be there, I said. And Amanda, tell the others, too. Tell all of her friends who think they know who I am. Tell them to pay attention tomorrow because they're about to learn something important about assumptions. What are you going to do? I'm going to give a toast, I said, and hung up. The morning of her birthday dawned clear and cold. One of those November days where the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at. I stood in front of my closet, the walk-in closet in the master bedroom of my new apartment, the one that was bigger than the entire bedroom in the old place, and considered what you wear to the funeral of a relationship. I chose a suit. Not the cheap one I'd worn to work functions when I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. The Armani charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of suit that announced you belonged in rooms where decisions were made and money changed hands. A white shirt, a tie the color of smoke, shoes that cost more than most people's rent. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. Not because I looked different, though I did somehow. Sharper and more solid than I remembered being, but because I felt different, like I'd been living as a ghost of myself and had only now remembered I had a body, a presence, a weight in the world. My phone buzzed. David, you sure about this? Yes, I typed back. Want backup? I considered it. David knew the whole story, had offered multiple times to come with me, to stand beside me when I walked into that venue and detonated the truth. But this wasn't his fight. This was mine. Personal, intimate, the kind of reckoning that has to happen alone. I'm good, but, thanks. Call me after. I want to hear everything. I pocketed my phone, picked up the folder from my desk, the thick one, the one I'd been assembling for months, and headed out. The venue was in the Arts District, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and Edison lights, the kind of place that looked industrial and romantic at the same time. She'd always wanted to have an event there or had shown me pictures on her phone, had talked about how perfect it would be for a wedding or a milestone birthday. I booked it 6 months ago, back when I thought we'd be celebrating together. Back when I thought the milestone would be ours, not just hers. I arrived early before any of the guests. The staff was still setting up, arranging tables, testing the sound system, putting out flowers and glass vases that caught the afternoon light. The venue manager saw me, her face brightening with recognition and maybe a little bit of nervousness. Mr. Castellan, she said, coming over quickly. We weren't sure if you were still planning to attend after last night with your friend calling. And I'm here, I said, and I'd like to make a few adjustments to the schedule if that's possible. She pulled out her tablet. All efficiency. Of course. What did you need? The toast. I'd like to give it right after dinner before the cake. Can we set up a microphone? Maybe put the screen down for a presentation. A presentation? Just a few slides. Nothing elaborate. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket, held it out. Everything's on here. Your AV person can load it up. She took the drive, her expression carefully neutral. Should we check with the guest of honor about this? It's a surprise, I said, and smiled. The kind of smile that made her not ask any more questions. Guests started arriving around 7. I watched from the bar, an actual bar, full service, top shelf liquor, another detail I'd paid for. As people filed in her friends first, the women who'd spent months planning this party without knowing who was really funding it. They looked nervous, whispering to each other, glancing around like they were expecting something to go wrong. Then her work colleagues, people I recognized from company events, from the few times I'd attended her office functions as the forgettable +1. They looked excited, dressed up, ready to celebrate someone they admired. And then at 7:30 exactly, she arrived. If you've ever seen someone walk into a room expecting applause and getting silence instead, you know what that looks like. The way their smile freezes, the way their eyes dart around, trying to understand what went wrong, why the script isn't being followed. She stood in the doorway wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Red, expensive, the kind that demanded attention. And slowly, One by one, people noticed her, started clapping, started calling out birthday wishes. The moment passed, the awkwardness dissolved, and she relaxed into the role she'd expected to play. The star of the evening, the woman everyone had come to celebrate. She didn't see me at first. I was standing at the back, partially hidden by a support column, watching. Amanda saw me, though. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw her face crumple slightly before she looked away. Guilt, I thought, or maybe fear. Maybe both. Dinner was served at 8, a 3-course meal. Each dish carefully chosen from the menu I'd selected months ago when I thought we'd be sharing this night together. I sat at a table in the back alone and ate in silence. While conversation flowed around me like a river, her friends kept glancing over, whispering. The tension in the room was building, a pressure system moving in. She finally noticed me during the main course. I watched her across the room as her gaze swept the venue, taking in the decorations, the guests, the elegant abundance of everything she'd claimed to have provided herself. Her eyes landed on me, and I saw the shock register. Saw her mouth form my name, saw her stand up, hesitate, sit back down. She said something to Amanda, who shook her head and looked away. The meal ended. Dessert plates were cleared. The venue manager dimmed the lights slightly, brought out the microphone, gestured to me. I stood up. The room went quiet. People turned, trying to figure out who I was, why I was walking to the front, what was about to happen. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, anger, maybe the first stirrings of understanding. "Hi," I said into the microphone. My voice carried through the room, steady and clear. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is James Castellan." I paused, chose my words carefully. I was in a relationship with the birthday girl for 4 years. Until 2 weeks ago, murmurs rippled through the crowd. She'd gone pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's evening," I continued. "Or to be petty. I'm here because I paid for this party." I let that sink in. Watched the realization spread through the room like a wave. And I thought it was important that everyone knew the truth before we celebrate. Truth matters, doesn't it? The screen behind me flickered to life. The first slide appeared, a copy of the venue invoice. My name at the top, the amount paid, the date, 3 months ago. "I booked this venue in August." "Why?" I said. "Paid for everything you have seen tonight. The food, the bar, the music. I did it because I loved her. Because I wanted to give her the birthday she deserved. Because I thought we had a future together." Next slide. See, receipts, dozens of them. 4 years of dates, gifts, trips, surprises, all annotated, all time-stamped. A financial history of a relationship. These are receipts from our relationship. Not all of them. That would take all night, but enough to show a pattern. I'm showing you these not to prove I'm generous or good, but to prove I was present, invested, committed. Her friends were staring at her now, questions forming on their faces. Next slide, a photograph of her from 2 weeks ago, the night she told me I wasn't impressive enough. She looked happy in it, beautiful, sure of herself. 2 weeks ago, she told me her friends thought I wasn't impressive enough for her, that she should aim higher. And you know what? She was right to listen to them because clearly I wasn't giving her the full picture of who I was. Final slide, the logo of my company, Data Core Solutions, and beneath it, the recent press release about our licensing deal, the valuation, the projected growth. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Data Core Solutions. We're a data analytics company that's currently valued at $43 million. We signed a licensing deal with a Fortune 500 company 6 months ago. We're looking at acquisition offers that would increase that valuation tenfold within the year. The room was dead silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. I never told her this because I wanted to build something real before announcing it. I wanted to be sure it wasn't just luck or timing. I wanted to earn the success, and I was planning to tell her tonight actually as part of a birthday surprise. I was going to propose. I pulled the ring box from my pocket, held it up so everyone could see. But 2 weeks ago, she told me I wasn't enough. So instead of a proposal, you get a presentation. Instead of a celebration of our future, you get the truth about our past. And the truth is this. I was impressive the whole time. I just didn't need to announce it to feel valuable. I set the microphone down, pocketed the ring, and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices rising, chairs scraping, someone crying. But I didn't look back. Amanda caught me in the parking lot, breathless from running. "Wait," she said. "Please, just wait." I turned. She looked wrecked, mascara smeared, her face blotchy from crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "For all of it. For what I said, for not knowing. For it's done, I said quietly. What happens now is up to her and all of you. She's devastated in there. Good, I said. Maybe now she knows what it feels like. I got in my car and drove away, leaving the party, the venue, the life I'd built with someone who'd never really seen me. And as I drove through the city streets with the night closing in around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. I drove for an hour with no destination in mind, just movement. The city lights blurring past my windows like stars and fast forward. My phone was buzzing constantly in the cup holder, texts, calls, notifications piling up so fast the screen never went dark. I ignored all of it. Let the messages accumulate. Let the chaos I'd created spin itself out without me there to witness it. If you've ever detonated the truth in a room full of people living uncomfortable lies, you know the aftermath isn't immediate. It's not like in movies where everything explodes at once and then resolves in a single dramatic conversation. Real life is messier, slower. The truth spreads like cracks in ice. One fracture leading to another. The whole surface suddenly unstable and dangerous to walk on. I ended up at the waterfront, parked in an empty lot overlooking the harbor. The water was black and smooth, reflecting the lights from the bridges, the buildings, the planes descending toward the airport. I sat there with the engine off, the heater slowly fading, and let the cold seep in. My phone buzzed again. I finally looked at it. 47 missed calls, 62 text messages, 3 voicemails. I scrolled through the notifications. Amanda multiple times. Her other friends, Jessica, Lauren, Kim, women I'd met at dinners and parties. Women who'd smiled at me while probably thinking exactly what Amanda had said out loud. Not impressive enough. My business partner, David, checking in on her. 23 messages from her, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't read them. Not yet. Instead, I opened the voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Castellan, this is Patricia Moreno from the venue. I wanted to let you know that the party, well, it ended early. After you left, there was quite a bit of discussion and the guests of honor decided to leave. Several of the guests left with her. The rest stayed for about another hour, but the energy had shifted. I just wanted to check in, make sure you're okay. What you did tonight was well, it was something. Call me if you need anything. I saved the message, moved to the next one. James, it's David. Dude, I don't know what happened tonight, but my phone is blowing up with LinkedIn requests from people who were apparently at some party. They're looking at our company page, asking questions. Whatever you did, it's making waves. Call me when you can. The third voicemail was from Amanda again, recorded an hour after the first call. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Her voice was tired. But I need you to know what happened after you left. She tried to God. She tried to explain it away. Said you were exaggerating, that the company wasn't really yours, that you were just trying to make her look bad. But then Jessica pulled up the press release on her phone, the article from Forbes about emerging tech companies. Your picture was right there, CEO and co-founder, and the valuation you mentioned, it's conservative. The article says you could be looking at 100 million in the next 2 years. A pause, the sound of wind like she was outside. Everyone just stared at her and she kept trying to explain, kept saying she didn't know that you'd hidden it from her. But Lauren asked why you would hide success from someone you loved unless you didn't trust them. And then Kim asked if she'd ever or actually asked about your work, about your life, or if she just assumed she knew everything worth knowing. And she couldn't answer. She just couldn't answer. Another pause longer this time. She's been calling me all night crying, saying she made a mistake, that she didn't understand. But James, I don't think she's crying because she hurt you. I think she's crying because she got caught underestimating you. And those are very different things. The message ended. I sat there in the dark car watching my breath fog the windows and thought about the difference between regret and remorse. Regret is about yourself, the consequences you're facing, the opportunities you've lost. Remorse is about the other person, the pain you've caused, the damage you've done. She was regretting, not showing remorse. I finally opened her messages. Read them in order. Watch the progression from confusion to anger to panic to something that looked like grief but might just have been self-pity. What the hell was that? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You had no right. How could you do this? Please call me. We need to talk. I didn't know. You never told me. Why did you hide everything from me? This isn't fair. Everyone is looking at me like I'm a monster. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please, James. Please. I love you. I didn't mean what I said. We can fix this. Please don't throw away 4 years over a misunderstanding. Call me, please. I'm begging you. I read them twice, looking for the moment where she took responsibility. looking for the place where she acknowledged that her friends' opinions had mattered more to her than our relationship, that she'd valued surface impressiveness over substance. That she'd ended things because I didn't meet some arbitrary standard of worth that had nothing to do with who I actually was. That moment never came. Every message was about her feelings, her embarrassment, her pain. Not once did she ask how I felt. Not once did she acknowledge that she'd hurt me. I deleted the messages. All of them. Watched them disappear one by one until my phone showed nothing but the time and the background image. A photograph I'd taken of the harbor on a winter morning before I'd met her, before I'd tried to reshape myself into someone I thought she could love. Then I called David. Finally, he said when he picked up, "Man, oh, I've been waiting." What happened? I told him everything. The toast, the slides, the ring, the walk out. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he let out a long low whistle. That's brutal, man. Elegant but brutal. She told me I wasn't impressive enough and you showed her exactly how wrong she was. I get it. I do. But what now? Because from where I'm sitting, you just became very, very visible. People are going to have questions. Let them ask, you sure? You've spent 2 years hiding, keeping the company quiet, maintaining that whole middle management cover. Now everyone knows. Her friends, her colleagues, and if they know, pretty soon everyone else will too. He was right. I detonated more than just my relationship tonight. I'd ended my anonymity, my ability to move through the world without people knowing who I was or what I was worth. By tomorrow, the story would spread. The guy who paid for his ex-girlfriend's birthday party just to expose her at it. The secret millionaire who pretended to be ordinary. The revenge served cold and data-backed. I'm sure I said I'm done hiding. All right, then. Welcome to the show, partner. Board meeting is still on for Monday. You ready to step into the CEO role publicly? More than ready? Good, because I have a feeling we're about to get a lot more attention than we were planning for. We talked for another 20 minutes. Business stuff, strategies, plans for the next quarter, normal things, grounding things. When we hung up, I felt steadier, clear, like I'd passed through something and emerged on the other side, changed, but intact. I drove home to my new home, the high-rise apartment with the view of the city, and finally allowed myself to feel it. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a deep bone-level exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for so long. You don't realize how much it weighs until you finally set it down. I slept for 12 hours, dreamless, deep. When I woke up, it was Sunday afternoon and my phone had 127 new notifications. The story had spread. I scrolled through my social media, saw the posts from people who'd been at the party, the speculation, the debates. Some people thought what I'd done was justified, a proportional response to public humiliation. Others thought it was petty, that I'd been cruel to exposure like that. A few thought it was fake, that the whole thing had been staged for attention. But underneath all the opinions and hot takes, there was a current of something else. Admiration maybe, or recognition. The sense that I'd done something a lot of people wished they could do proved wrong everyone who'd ever underestimated them. My inbox was flooded. Interview requests from business publications, messages from investors I'd never heard of, congratulations from old friends who'd seen the news. And buried in all of it, another email from her. Subject, please read this. I almost deleted it without opening. Almost. But something made me click. James, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen the way it did. When my friends said those things at dinner, I should have defended you. I should have told them they were wrong, that you were exactly impressive enough, that you were more than enough. Instead, I agreed with them because I was confused and scared, and I let their voices matter more than my own feelings. I didn't know about your company, about your success. And I'm not saying I should have known. You had your reasons for keeping it private, and I respect that. But I wish you had trusted me enough to tell me. I wish I had been someone you could trust with that part of yourself. What you did last night hurt. It embarrassed me in front of everyone I know. But I understand why you did it. I understand that I hurt you first and worst because I made you feel like you weren't worthy of love unless you were impressive by someone else's standards. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if you even want to try. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because everyone found out the truth. Not because I'm facing consequences. But because I hurt someone I loved. Because I let external voices matter more than what we built together. If you can forgive me, if you can give me another chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I see you. Really see you. Not your bank account or your company or your impressive credentials. Just you. I love you. I think I always have. I just forgot what that meant. Please call me. Yum. I read it 3 times, looking for sincerity, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or just sophisticated regret dressed up in prettier words. She said the right things, took responsibility, acknowledged the hurt, admitted her mistake, but something about it felt performative, like she'd workshopped it with her friends, polished it until it sounded like the apology I might want to hear rather than the truth of what she actually felt. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe my trust in her had been so thoroughly broken that I couldn't see genuine contrition even when it was right in front of me. Or maybe I'd learned something important about the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you can do for them. I closed the email without responding. Outside my window, the city was alive with Sunday afternoon energy. People in parks, couples walking dogs, families having brunch, life continuing despite the small personal apocalypse I'd orchestrated the night before. The world didn't care about my revenge, my revelation, my pain. It just kept turning. My phone rang, unknown number, but with a local area code. Hello, Mr. Castellan. This is Marcus Webb from Tech Innovation Magazine. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about data core solutions and last night's incident. How did you get this number? I'm resourceful. Listen, this is a story people want to hear. The secret CEO, the dramatic reveal, the relationship fallout. It's got everything. I'd love to get your side of it. Set the record straight. I thought about it. Thought about stepping into the light fully, owning the narrative, making sure the story that spread was the true one and not the distorted version that would inevitably emerge from gossip and speculation. Give me your email, I said. I'll send you a statement. I hung up and opened my laptop, typed for 20 minutes, editing and refining until I had something that felt honest without being vindictive, clear without being defensive. When I hit send, I felt something shift. The last piece falling into place. The door closing on who I'd been and opening on who I was about to become. Chapter 5. The shift. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, knotting my tie with the practiced precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times and tried to recognize the person looking back at me. Same face, same hands. But something fundamental had shifted. Like the internal geography had been redrawn overnight. Today was the board meeting, the one David had been preparing for, the one where we'd present our 5-year plan to investors who were ready to inject serious capital into data core solutions. Except when we'd scheduled this meeting 3 weeks ago, I'd still been living in the shadows, still maintaining the careful fiction of who I was supposed to be. Now everyone knew. My phone buzzed with the morning news alerts I'd set up over the weekend. Tech blogs were running the story. Secret CEO's birthday party revenge goes viral. Data core solutions of founder exposes exit own party. The most expensive birthday gift ever. The truth. Some of the articles were sympathetic. Others accused me of being petty, cruel, unnecessarily dramatic. A few questioned whether someone who'd staged such a public confrontation was emotionally stable enough to run a company. I read them all with the detached interest of someone reading about a stranger's life. Let them speculate. Let them judge. The truth was documented, time-stamped, undeniable. I grabbed my briefcase, actual leather, expensive, the kind of accessory I'd never let myself buy when I was pretending to be ordinary, and headed out. The data core offices looked different somehow, though nothing had physically changed. Same exposed brick, same open floor plan, same whiteboards covered in code and diagrams. But the energy was different. Electric. When I walked in, conversation stopped. People looked up from their desks, and I saw something in their expressions I'd never seen before. Recognition, respect, maybe a little bit of awe. Sarah, our lead developer, was the first to speak. "Boss, hell of a weekend you had." That's one way to put it. For what it's worth, she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "I think you handled it perfectly. People who underestimate you deserve to be educated publicly." A few others murmured agreement. I felt something loosen in my chest. The worry I'd been carrying that my team would see what I'd done as unprofessional, as a liability. But they were tech people, coders and engineers and data analysts who'd spent their whole lives being underestimated by people who thought impressive meant loud or flashy or obvious. They understood. David emerged from his office, coffee in hand, grin on his face. There he is, the man of the hour. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because the investors are already here. They arrived early. And James," he lowered his voice. "They saw the news, all of it." My stomach dropped. "And they want to talk about it." Not in a bad way, just they want to understand who they're investing in. Of course they did. Venture capitalists didn't pour millions into companies run by people they couldn't predict. And I'd just proven myself spectacularly unpredictable. We walked to the conference room together. Through the glass walls, I could see them. 4 people in expensive suits, laptops open, coffee cups steaming: Michael Torres, the lead investor from Apex Ventures; Jennifer Kim from Summit Capital. 2 others I recognized from previous calls but had never met in person. When we entered, they all stood professional, courteous, but I could see the assessment happening behind their eyes, the rapid calculation of risk versus reward. "James," Michael said, extending his hand. "Good to finally meet you in person. Hell of a way to go public." I shook his hand firmly. "Not how I planned it, but here we are. Let's sit." Jennifer gestured to the table. "We have a lot to discuss." The next hour was brutal. Not in an aggressive way. No one raised their voice or made accusations, but in the relentless precision of their questions. They wanted to know everything. Why I'd kept the company secret. Why I'd maintained a double life. What my relationship status was now and whether it would affect my judgment, whether the publicity was a one-time event or a pattern of behavior. I answered honestly, explained that I'd wanted to build something real before announcing it, that I'd needed to know success wasn't luck before claiming it as identity. Told them about the relationship ending, about the decision to reveal the truth rather than let lies compound. Acknowledged that the publicity wasn't ideal, but that I stood by every choice I'd made. "Here's my concern," Michael said, leaning forward. "You've just put yourself in the spotlight. That means Data Core is in the spotlight. We're about to invest a significant amount of capital, and we need to know that you can handle the attention without it becoming a distraction." "I can handle it." "Can you?" Jennifer's voice was sharp, but not unkind. "Because from where I'm sitting, you just blew up your personal life in a very public way. That takes an emotional toll. How do we know you'll be focused on scaling this company and not on managing fallout?" I met her eyes, held her gaze. "Because the fallout is already managed. I didn't do what I did on impulse. I planned it carefully, documented everything, made sure the truth was undeniable, and now it's done. Finished. I'm not interested in dragging it out or creating more drama. I'm interested in building this company into something that matters." David jumped in. "If I can add something, I've known James for 5 years. Worked with him every day for the last 2. What happened this weekend wasn't a breakdown. It was a recalibration. He was living half a life and now he's not. And honestly, I think that makes him a better CEO, not a worse one." The room went quiet. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of someone typing in the main office, the city traffic 40 floors below. Finally, Michael nodded. "All right, let's talk numbers." The meeting lasted another 3 hours. By the end, we had a deal. $20 million in Series B funding, a valuation that made my head spin, a timeline for scaling that would require hiring 30 new people in the next 6 months. It was everything we'd been working toward, everything we dreamed about. When we started this company in David's garage 2 years ago. When the investors left, David and I sat in the conference room in stunned silence. "We did it," he said finally. "We actually did it." "Yeah. You know what this means, right? No more hiding. No more pretending. You're about to become very, very public. Tech conferences, industry panels, magazine covers probably." I thought about that, about the life I'd carefully constructed to stay invisible, to avoid attention, to be overlooked. All of it gone now, burned away in a single night of truth-telling. "Good," as Anna said, "I'm tired of being invisible." My phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you about something. It's important." I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to cut ties with everyone connected to that chapter of my life. But Amanda had called me that night, had tried to warn me, had been one of the first to see the truth for what it was. "When?" I typed back. "Tonight, 7 p.m., there's a coffee shop near your new place." I looked up the address. "I hope that's not creepy." "It's fine. Send me the location." The coffee shop was one of those places that tried very hard to look casual while charging $8 for a latte, exposed Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood tables, a chalkboard menu written in perfect hipster script. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and sat in the back corner where I could see the door. Amanda arrived exactly on time, looking nervous. She dressed down, jeans, a sweater, minimal makeup, like she was trying to be as non-threatening as possible. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Relief maybe, or fear. She ordered a tea, came to the table, sat down carefully like she was approaching a wild animal. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you." She wrapped her hands around her cup, seeking warmth. "I've been thinking a lot about that night, about what I said, What we all said. You mean the part where you decided I wasn't impressive enough? She flinched. Yes, that part. And I need you to understand something, even though it doesn't excuse what I said. We were being God, we were being terrible, shallow. We'd had 3 bottles of wine and we were talking the way women sometimes talk about men when we think it doesn't matter, when we think it's just harmless girl talk. Except it wasn't harmless. No, it wasn't because she took it seriously. She let us plant doubts in her head about someone she loved. And instead of defending you, she agreed with us. And that's on her. But it's on me, too. I said the words that started it. I took a sip of coffee, waited. I've known her for 8 years, Amanda continued. We met in college. She's been my best friend through everything. Breakups, job losses, family drama, and I thought I knew her. But after Saturday night, after watching her try to explain away what you revealed, I realize I don't know her at all. Or maybe I do, and I just never wanted to see it. See what? That she measures people constantly, ranks them against some internal scorecard. I don't even think she's aware of. You were in a box labeled stable but unimpressive. And she never bothered to look deeper. Never asked questions. Never wondered if there might be more to you than what she could see on the surface. Amanda's eyes were bright with tears she was trying to hold back. And the worst part, I enabled it. We all did. We reinforced her worst instincts instead of challenging them. We made her think it was okay to evaluate her partner like he was a stock portfolio. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know it wasn't just her. It was all of us. And because she paused, choosing her words carefully. Because she's not going to stop trying to get you back. She's already planning it. I heard her on the phone yesterday. Yeah. Talking to Jessica about strategies, how to apologize, how to prove she's changed, how to make you see that she deserves another chance. I felt my jaw tighten. And you think I should know this? Why? Because I think you should be prepared. She's not accepting that it's over. She thinks if she just says the right things, makes the right gestures, shows enough remorse, you'll take her back. And maybe you will. I don't know. But I wanted you to know that if you do, it needs to be because she's genuinely changed, not because she's gotten good at performing change. The distinction landed like a stone in still water. Can people change? I asked. Really change? Not just perform it. Amanda was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she said finally. I want to believe they can. But I think real change requires seeing yourself clearly first. And I'm not sure she's there yet. I'm not sure she's even close. We sat in silence for a while, watching people come and go, living their ordinary lives with their ordinary problems. Finally, Amanda stood up. I should go. I wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in all of this. You deserve better from all of us. Thank you, I said. Meant it too. She left and I sat there alone with my coffee going cold, thinking about change and performance and the difference between the two, thinking about the email she'd sent, the carefully crafted apology that had hit all the right notes without quite ringing true. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Elena from the party. I'm one of her work colleagues. Can we talk? There's something you need to know. I stared at the message, feeling the inevitable pull of unfinished business of truth still waiting to be revealed. Tomorrow I type back my office 2 p.m. because here's what I'd learn. When you crack open the truth, you don't get to control what spills out. You just have to stand there and watch it flow. Watch it reshape everything it touches. Watch it force everyone to decide who they really are when the comfortable lies fall away. And sometimes the truth keeps coming long after you think you're done revealing it. Tuesday morning arrived wrapped in fog, the kind that makes the city look like it's dissolving at the edges, buildings fading into gray nothing. I stood at my office window, watching it roll in from the bay, thick and cold, and thought about how appropriate it was, how everything that had seemed solid a week ago was now indistinct. Reshaping itself into forms I didn't quite recognize yet. The morning passed in a blur of productivity. Emails, conference calls, contract reviews. The ordinary machinery of running a company made extraordinary by the fact that I was doing it publicly now. No more hiding behind David. No more deflecting questions about who was really in charge. My name was on everything. My face was becoming recognizable. Yesterday, someone had recognized me in the elevator. Asked if I was that guy from the birthday party thing. I'd nodded, waited for judgment, gotten a fist bump instead. If you've ever gone from invisible to visible overnight, you know how disorienting it is. Like you've been walking around in a costume your whole life and suddenly someone ripped it off and you're standing there exposed and you can't remember what you're supposed to do with your hands. At 1:45, reception called up. Mr. Castellan, there's an Elena Vasquez here to see you. Send her up. I tidied my desk, straightened papers that didn't need straightening, and waited. Through the glass walls of my office, I watched her emerge from the elevator. Mid-30s, professional, but not corporate. Blazer over jeans, good boots, the kind of put together that suggested competence without trying too hard. She looked around the office space with evident curiosity, taking in the exposed brick, the standing desks, the energy of a place where things were being built. I met her at the door. "Elena, thanks for coming. Thanks for seeing me." Her handshake was firm, her eyes direct. "I wasn't sure you would after everything. Come in, sit." She settled into the chair across from my desk, declined the offer of coffee or water, and got straight to the point. "I work with your ex-girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend, is that the right term?" "It'll do. We're in the same department, marketing and client relations. I've known her for about 3 years since she started. And I need to tell you something that I probably should have told you a long time ago, except I didn't know you existed." "Not really. Not as anything more than the boyfriend she occasionally mentioned." I leaned back in my chair, watched her carefully. She was nervous but determined. The way people get when they have decided to do the right thing even though it's uncomfortable. "Go ahead," I said. "She talks about you at work." "Talked, I guess, past tense now, but it was always diminishing little comments that seemed harmless on their own but added up over time. My boyfriend's not really ambitious. He's sweet, but kind of boring. He has a good job, but nothing special. She made you sound like an accessory, like something she was settling for until something better came along." The words landed with the dull ache of confirmation. Not surprising exactly, but painful to hear, stated so plainly. "And none of us questioned it," Elena continued. "Because we believed her. She presented you as this perfectly nice but unimpressive guy and we all just accepted that narrative. When she'd talk about going on vacation, she'd say she paid for it. When she'd mention the nice apartment, she'd imply it was hers. She was always the one with money, with taste, with ambition. You were just there. Why are you telling me this?" Elena leaned forward, her expression intense. "Because at the party when you showed those receipts, those invoices, that press release, I realized she'd been lying. Not just to you, to all of us. She'd constructed this entire fiction about her life, and we'd all been living inside it without realizing it." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, turned it to face me. "This is from the company Slack from about 6 months ago." I read the message thread, her name at the top, responding to someone asking about weekend plans. "Taking my boyfriend to this new restaurant I found. He's not really a foodie, but I'm trying to expand his horizons. Sometimes I feel like I'm dating a child. Lol." Below it, responses from her colleagues, laughing emojis, sympathetic comments. "Girl, I've been there. Why do we do this to ourselves? You deserve someone on your level." "There are dozens of these," Elena said quietly. "Maybe hundreds years of little comments, little put-downs, painting you as someone who needed her to elevate him. And the thing is, we all believed it because she was so confident, so sure of herself. It never occurred to any of us that she might be lying or that she might not actually know who you were." I handed her phone back, felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. She was embarrassed by me. Yes, but not because of who you were. Because of who she'd decided you were without ever bothering to find out the truth. Elena stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the fog-wrapped city. "I'm telling you this because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same fundamental betrayal. My ex-husband spent 5 years telling people I was difficult, demanding, impossible to please. Made me sound like a shrew who was never satisfied. And I believed him. Eventually, started seeing myself through his descriptions. It wasn't until after we divorced that I found out he'd been telling everyone I was the problem while he was cheating on me with 3 different women." She turned back to face me. "The point is, when someone controls the narrative about you, when they define you to everyone else, it's a form of violence. A quiet one, but violence nonetheless, and you deserve to know the full extent of it." "How bad was it?" "Bad enough that when you revealed the truth Saturday night, half the office was texting about it by midnight. Bad enough that yesterday when she came to work, people couldn't look at her the same way. Bad enough that I heard she met with HR this morning about a hostile work environment." I raised an eyebrow. "She's claiming harassment. She's claiming that people are treating her differently because of her personal life, that she's being judged unfairly, that what happened between you two is private and shouldn't affect her professionally." "And what did HR say?" Elena smiled grimly. "They said that lying about your financial situation and taking credit for things your partner paid for isn't a protected class. They also said that people are allowed to form their own opinions based on publicly available information. Basically, they told her that consequences aren't the same as persecution." I thought about that, about her sitting in an HR office trying to frame herself as the victim, trying to use the language of injustice to avoid accountability. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so predictable. Is she going to be fired? No. She's good at her job. Whatever else she is, she's competent professionally, but her reputation is damaged. People see her differently now. And in our industry, reputation matters. Elena gathered her things, preparing to leave. I should go. I just wanted you to know what we were all seeing from the outside. And to say that what you did Saturday, it wasn't petty. It wasn't cruel. It was necessary. Sometimes the only way to stop living in someone else's lie is to blow it up completely. I walked her to the elevator, shook her hand again. Thank you for coming, for telling me. You're welcome. And James, don't take her back. Whatever she says, however convincing she is, don't. Because people like that don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are. The elevator doors closed and I stood there watching the numbers descend, thinking about narratives and lies and the stories we tell about the people we're supposed to love. The rest of the day passed in mechanical motion. Meetings, decisions, the ordinary work of building something. But underneath it all, Elena's words kept echoing. Years of little comments, little put-downs, she'd been erasing me in public. While I'd been building a life I thought we were sharing. At 6, I left the office and drove to the gym. Not the cheap one I belonged to when I was maintaining my cover, but the expensive one with the good equipment and the saunas and the trainers who knew what they were doing. I ran 5 miles on the treadmill, pushed weights until my muscles burned, stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When I emerged, cleaned and exhausted, my phone showed 3 missed calls. All from her. I sat in the locker room, towel around my waist, and stared at the screen. Thought about calling back. Thought about finally having the conversation that would put this to rest. But what would be the point? What could she say that would change anything? Instead, I opened my email and composed a message. I've received your texts, your emails, your calls. I've read your apology, and I've spent the last few days learning things about how you talked about me, how you portrayed me, how you erased my contributions to our life together while taking credit for them yourself. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who got comfortable with a narrative that made you feel superior. And when that narrative was marriage was challenged, you didn't know how to respond except to double down on it. But here's what I need you to understand. I'm not interested in being the person you think you can fix or save or elevate. I'm not interested in being the project you take on to prove you've grown. I'm not interested in being the story you tell at dinner parties about the time you almost lost someone and learned to appreciate what you had. I'm interested in building a life with someone who sees me clearly from the beginning. Someone who doesn't need a dramatic revelation to understand my worth. Someone who asks questions instead of making assumptions. You weren't that person. Maybe you could become that person. But that transformation isn't my responsibility. It's yours. I wish you well. I hope you learn from this. But I'm done. I read it 3 times. Checking for cruelty, for unnecessary wounds. Found none. It was clean, honest, final. I hit send. Driving home, I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, but unburdened, like I'd been carrying something for so long, I'd forgotten it was heavy. And now it was gone and I could breathe fully for the first time in years. My phone rang. David. Hey. I said, hey, yourself. You sound better. I feel better. Just sent the final email. The one that closes the door. Good. You deserve to move on. Speaking of which, I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news. Great news. Actually, Forbes wants to do a profile, full feature. The CEO who hid in plain sight. They want to interview you. Tour the office. Talk about the company's trajectory. This is huge, James. This is the kind of publicity that takes companies from successful to unstoppable. I pulled into my parking garage, sat in the car with the engine idling. When they want to start next week, writer and photographer, multiple sessions, they're talking about a cover story. A month ago, this would have terrified me. Would have sent me scrambling to decline, to stay hidden, to maintain the careful fiction of ordinariness. Now set it up, I said. I'm ready. Yeah. No more hiding. If I'm going to be visible, might as well be impossible to miss. David laughed. That's what I like to hear. Oh, and one more thing. We got 3 acquisition inquiries today. 3. Everyone wants to know if we're for sale. Are we? That's up to you, partner. But the numbers they're floating are insane. 9 figures with a commitment to keep us both on as executives. 9 figures. The kind of money that changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone you know. The kind of success that makes every sacrifice worthwhile. Let's hear them out, I said. But I'm not making any decisions until we see the full picture. Fair enough. All right, I'll let you go. Sounds like you've had a day. That's putting it mildly. I hung up and took the elevator to my floor, let myself into the apartment, stood at the window, looking out at the city lights piercing through the thinning fog. Somewhere out there, she was receiving my email, reading it, realizing that the door I'd opened Saturday night, the one that revealed who I really was, had closed just as firmly on who we could ever be together. And somewhere else, the future was arranging itself into shapes I couldn't quite see yet. Interviews, acquisition talks, a version of success I'd spent years building toward and never quite believing would arrive. The fog was lifting. The city was emerging, and I was standing in the middle of it all, fully visible at last, ready for whatever came next. The Forbes writer's name was Claire Martinez, and she had the kind of presence that made you understand why people told her their secrets. Not aggressive, not pushy, just deeply attentive in a way that made silence feel unbearable. She arrived at the office on Thursday morning with a photographer named Marcus. Both of them professional and prepared, ready to excavate the story I'd been living in the shadows for 2 years. If you've ever had to explain yourself to someone whose job is to find the cracks in your narrative, you know that peculiar vulnerability, the way every answer feels like it's being weighed and measured, filed away for later use. Claire settled into the chair across from my desk, recorder between us like a small black judge, and smiled. So, she said, let's start at the beginning. When did you know you were building something that mattered? I thought about that. Really thought about it. Not the easy answer, the day we got our first client, the day the licensing deal closed, the day we saw our first 7-figure recorder. But the real moment, the one that mattered. 2 years ago, I said, David and I were working on the prototype in his garage. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd been coding for 8 hours straight, and suddenly the algorithm worked. Just clicked into place. We ran the test data through it and it processed in seconds what would have taken a human analyst days to calculate. And I looked at David and he looked at me and we both knew this was real. But you didn't tell anyone. No. Why not? I leaned back, chose my words carefully. Because I'd spent my whole life watching people change. When they found out you had money or success or potential, they started treating you differently, started seeing you as an opportunity instead of a person. I didn't want that. I wanted to build something authentic before the weight of expectation crushed it. Claire made a note. And your girlfriend at the time, you didn't tell her either. No. Well, she not. Can you help me understand that decision? Most people would want to share that kind of excitement with their partner. This was the part everyone wanted to understand. The part that seemed from the outside like either profound distrust or cruel game playing. But the truth was more complicated than that. I was going to tell her. I said I had it planned. Actually, her birthday. I was going to propose and explain everything at once. Here's who I really am. Here's what we've built. Here's the life we can have together if you want it. But to do that, I needed to trust that she loved me for who I was, not for what I could provide. And somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't have that trust. Because she'd never actually asked who I was. She just assumed, and I'd let her assume. And we'd both been living in that assumption for so long, it had calcified into fact. Until it didn't. Until it didn't. Marcus moved around the office while Wish talked to a camera clicking softly capturing the space, the whiteboards full of equations, the team working at their desks, building the visual narrative that would accompany whatever story Claire decided to tell. Walk me through the party, Claire said. The decision to reveal everything publicly. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't about easy. It was about necessary. I stood up, walked to the window. Below the city stretched out in geometric patterns, streets and buildings and lives intersecting in ways that looked random, but followed rules you could map if you paid attention. She told me I wasn't impressive enough, that her friends thought she should aim higher. And I realized that she'd spent 4 years looking at me and never seeing me, never asking, never wondering if there might be more beneath the surface. So you showed her. I showed everyone because the lie wasn't just between us. She'd been telling people, her friends, her colleagues, that I was less than I was, that she was carrying me, that I was lucky to have her. And those lies had power. They shaped how everyone saw me, saw us, saw our relationship. The only way to break that power was to tell the truth louder than she'd told the lies. Claire was quiet for a moment, and I could feel her deciding something. Which angle to take, which story to tell. Finally, she spoke. Some people think what you did was vindictive. That you weaponized the truth to humiliate her. Some people would be wrong. I turned back to face her. The truth isn't a weapon. It's just the truth. If someone feels humiliated by it, that's not because I wielded it cruelly. It's because they've been living in a lie that made them comfortable. And comfort isn't the same as honesty. Fair enough. She made another note. Tell me about data core, what you're building, why it matters. The next hour was easier. I talked about the company, the technology, the vision. This was the part I could control, the part that wasn't tangled up in emotion and betrayal. Claire asked smart questions, pushed on the details, wanted to understand not just what we did, but why it mattered in the larger landscape of tech innovation. By the time she left, with promises to send a draft for fact-checking and a timeline for publication, I felt drained but oddly energized. Like I'd been carrying this story alone for so long that speaking it out loud to someone whose job was to tell it to the world had lifted something I didn't know was weighing on me. That evening, I met David at a bar downtown. Not the dive bars we used to frequent when we were scraping together capital and living on ramen. This one had craft cocktails and exposed copper piping and prices that made tourists wooz. We sat at the bar, ordered drinks we couldn't pronounce, and let the week settle around us. How'd the interview go? David asked. Hard, good. She asked all the questions I didn't want to answer. And you answered them? Most of them, some of them, I deflected. But enough of them that she'll have a story. You ready for what happens when it publishes? I took a sip of my drink, something with bourbon and bitters and a sphere of ice that caught the light like a small planet. I don't think you can ever be ready for that kind of visibility, but I'm not hiding from it anymore. Good. David signaled the bartender for another round because I've been thinking about those acquisition offers and I think we should hear them all out. Really consider them. You want to sell? I want to win. And sometimes winning means knowing when you've built something big enough that it needs resources you don't have. We could keep grinding, keep growing organically, probably hit a 100 million valuation in 3 years. Or we could take one of these offers, get the resources to scale globally, and hit $1 billion in the same time frame. $1 billion. The word hung between us like something tangible, something you could reach out and touch. What would we do with that kind of money? Ixie, I asked. David laughed. Whatever the hell we want. Travel, invest, start other companies, buy islands. I don't know, man. The point isn't what we do with it. The point is we'd have options. Real options. The kind of security that means you never have to compromise yourself for someone else ever again. He didn't say her name. Didn't need to. We both knew what he was talking about. The years I'd spent making myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision. The careful management of expectations, the hiding of success, the diminishment of self. Let's take the meetings, I said. All of them. See what's out there. That's what I like to hear. David raised his glass. To truth, to success, to never hiding again. We drank to that. And I felt something shift. Not just in my circumstances, though those were changing rapidly, but in my understanding of what success actually meant. It wasn't the money, though the money was good. It wasn't the recognition, though that had its value. It was the freedom to be exactly who you were without apology or explanation. To take up the space you'd earned, to stop asking permission to exist at full volume. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but the message made my stomach drop. James, this is Rebecca. I'm Elena's manager. We need to talk. There's been a development with your ex-girlfriend's employment situation. Can you call me? I showed David the message. He read it, his expression darkening. What do you think happened? Nothing good. I stepped outside to make the call. The night air was cold, sharp, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Rebecca answered on the second ring. Mr. Castellan, thank you for calling back. What happened? She sighed and I could hear the exhaustion in it. Your ex-girlfriend Pan filed a formal complaint against several employees, including Elena, claiming they've created a hostile work environment. She's alleging that they've been harassing her about her personal life, making comments about the party incident, treating her differently because of information you disclosed, and an HR is taking it seriously because they have too. But during the investigation, some things came to light that I think you should know about. Things that paint a very different picture of what was happening before any of this became public. I'm listening. We pulled Slack logs, email communications, meeting notes. Your ex-girlfriend has been taking credit for work that wasn't hers for at least 18 months, presenting other people's ideas as her own in client meetings, making herself look good by diminishing her teammates. And when people tried to call her on it, she'd frame it as them being jealous or unsupportive. I closed my eyes, felt the cold concrete wall against my back. Of course she'd been doing at work what she'd been doing in our relationship, constructing a narrative where she was the star and everyone else was supporting cast. What happens now? Honestly, we're probably going to let her go. Not because of the party thing. That's personal. And we don't police people's personal lives, but because the pattern of behavior we uncovered violates our values around collaboration and integrity. We're still doing due diligence, but it's not looking good for her. I didn't want this, I said. I didn't want her to lose her job. I know Elena told me you're not vindictive, but Mr. Castellan, you didn't do this. She did. She built a house of cards and you just happened to be the breeze that knocked it over. The collapse was inevitable. You just accelerated the timeline. We talked for a few more minutes and she promised to keep me updated. When I hung up, I stood there in the cold for a long time trying to figure out how I felt. Not satisfied exactly, not happy that her life was falling apart, but not guilty either because Rebecca was right. I hadn't built the lie. I just stopped living inside it. When I went back inside, David took one look at my face and ordered us both another drink. That bad? She's probably going to get fired for the same things she was doing to me. Taking credit, diminishing others, building herself up by tearing other people down. Karma's I guess. So, I took the drink, held it without drinking. I keep waiting to feel something. Satisfaction or vindication or even guilt, but I just feel tired like I've been running a marathon and I can finally all stop. Then stop. Let it be over. She's facing consequences for her actions. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to build the life you want. Everything else is just noise. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing and feeling are different things. And I was still caught somewhere between the two. My phone buzzed again. This time a message from Claire. Got some fact-checking questions. Also found some interesting public records about business filings. Want to give me a quote about your projected growth? This story is getting bigger than I thought. I type back, send the questions. I'll answer tonight because that's what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define what happened next. Not pretending the past didn't matter, but not letting it hold me hostage either. I finished my drink, said goodbye to David, and headed home. Tomorrow, there would be more meetings, more interviews, more decisions about acquisition offers and company direction. Tomorrow, the story would continue to unfold, would continue to reshape itself into something I couldn't quite see yet. But tonight, standing in my apartment with the city lights spread out below me like a map of possibility, I felt something close to peace. The kind that comes not from having all the answers, but from finally asking the right questions. Who was I without the weight of someone else's diminishment? What could I build when I stopped hiding? Where would I go when I stopped asking permission to take up space? The questions hung in the air like promises waiting to be kept. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was ready to find out. The Forbes article went live on a Tuesday morning, and by noon, my phone had become unusable. I watched it happen in real time. The article appeared online first, a long-form piece with the headline, "The Invisible CEO, How James Castellan Built a $43 million Company While Everyone Was Looking the Other Way." Marcus's photographs accompanied it. Me at my desk, the team working in the open office space. A particularly striking shot of the city skyline taken from my apartment window at golden hour. Claire had done her job well. The piece was thorough, balanced, unflinching. She'd included everything. The relationship, the party, the revelation, but she'd framed it not as petty revenge, but as a case study in the cost of hiding yourself. The price you pay when you let someone else write the story of who you are. The comments section exploded immediately. Half the readers thought I was a hero. Half thought I wasn't, and everyone had an opinion about what it meant. By 10 a.m., we'd gotten 16 interview requests from major publications. By 11, 3 podcasts wanted me as a guest. By noon, my LinkedIn had 10,000 new connection requests, and Datacore's website had crashed from traffic. David walked into my office, his face split by a grin so wide it looked painful. "We just got a call from TechCrunch. Want to do a video interview and Bloomberg is asking if you'll come on their morning show next week." "James, do you understand what's happening? We're not just getting attention. We're getting the kind of attention that makes companies." I looked at my phone at the endless stream of notifications at the world suddenly paying attention to something I'd built in the shadows. If you've ever experienced that particular vertigo going from invisible to everywhere all at once, you know it's not purely exhilarating. It's also terrifying because once the world sees you, it never stops looking. "How do you want to handle this?" David asked. "Because we need a strategy. We can't just wing it. Get us a publicist, someone who knows how to manage this kind of attention. And set up those acquisition meetings for next week. If we're going to be visible, might as well be visible with leverage. Already on it. First meeting is Friday. Summit Capital wants to come here, tour the operation, talk numbers. They're bringing their full team. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare for a conversation that could change everything. That could take this company I'd built with my own hands and transform it into something bigger than I'd ever imagined. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, but with a local area code. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. James Castellan. Mr. Castellan, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the business school at Stanford. I'm calling because we'd love to have you speak to our entrepreneurship class about building companies and managing public perception. The Forbes piece was extraordinary, and I think our students could learn a lot from your experience. Stanford, one of the top business schools in the world, asking me to teach their students. A month ago, I'd been the forgettable boyfriend at dinner parties. Now I was someone Stanford wanted in front of future CEOs. I'd be honored, I said. Have your assistant send me the details. When I hung up, I sat there for a moment trying to process it. The speed of transformation, the way the world had suddenly decided I was worth paying attention to. Not because I changed, but because they could finally see what had been there all along. That evening, I went for a run. Needed to move, to think, to let my body process what my mind was still struggling with. The fog had cleared, leaving the city sharp and bright under a sky going purple with dusk. I ran along the waterfront, past tourists and couples and people living their ordinary lives, and felt the rhythm of my feet against pavement settle something inside me. On my way back, cutting through the park near my apartment, I saw her. She was sitting on a bench near the fountain, alone, staring at nothing. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the confidence that used to radiate from her had been dialed down to something uncertain. She was wearing workout clothes, but she wasn't exercising, just sitting, waiting, maybe, or hiding. I could have kept running. Could have pretended I didn't see her. Let the moment pass without acknowledgement. But I'd spent 4 years avoiding difficult conversations with her, smoothing over rough edges, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I was done with that. I slowed to a walk, approached the bench. She looked up as I got closer, and I watched recognition and about 12 other emotions flash across her face in quick succession. Surprise, fear, hope, resignation. "Hi," she said. Her voice was small. "Hi. Can I?" She gestured to the bench. "Can you sit for a minute?" I should have said no. Should have kept walking. Kept the boundary I'd established. Protected the peace I'd been building. But I sat. Not because I owed her anything, but because I owed myself closure that felt chosen rather than accidental. I read the Forbes article. She said, "It's everywhere. You're everywhere." Yeah. I didn't know it was that big. The company, what you'd built. The article made it sound like you were running a real empire while I thought you were just coasting. I didn't say anything. Let the silence do its work. "I lost my job," she continued. "Yesterday, they said it was about performance and collaboration issues, but we both know it was because of everything that came out, everything I'd been doing. I'm sorry that happened. Are you?" She looked at me directly for the first time because it feels like you set all of this in motion, like you knew exactly what would happen when you revealed everything at the party, like you calculated every domino. I thought about that, about whether I'd known or should have known that the truth would cascade the way it had, that pulling back the curtain on one lie would reveal all the others. "I didn't calculate anything," I said. "I just stopped participating in the fiction. Everything else, your reputation at work, the way your friends see you now, the job you lost, those are consequences of choices you made. I didn't take credit for other people's work. I didn't diminish my colleagues to make myself look good. I didn't tell lies to everyone in my life about who was really pulling weight in our relationship. You did those things. I just stopped covering for them." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. I know. I did all of that. And I've been trying to figure out why. Why I needed to make you smaller. Why I couldn't just see you. And did you figure it out?" She was quiet for a long time, watching the fountain, the water catching the last light of day. "I think I was scared that you were actually extraordinary. And if I acknowledged that, I'd have to acknowledge that I wasn't. That maybe I was the one who wasn't impressive enough. So, I convinced myself, convinced everyone that you were the problem, that you were holding me back, when really I was just terrified that you'd realize you didn't need me." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Raw, undefended. The truth beneath all the other truths. "You were right to be scared," I said quietly. "Because I did realize it, just not in the way you thought I would." "What do you mean?" "I realized I didn't need you to validate my worth. I realized that I'd been making myself small, not because you forced me to, but because I thought love meant accommodation. That being with someone meant molding yourself to fit their expectations. But that's not love. That's just disappearing slowly while someone else takes up all the space." She wiped at her eyes, finally letting the tears fall. "I do love you. I know you don't believe that now, but I do. I just didn't know how to love you without needing you to be less than you were, and that's something I have to live with." "Yes," I said, "it is. Is there any chance?" She stopped, started again. Is there any universe where we could try again? Where I could prove to you that I've learned, that I can be different. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find any trace of the feeling I'd had 4 years ago when I thought she was the person I'd spend my life with. Tried to find hope or possibility or even curiosity about whether people really could change. Found nothing. Just a kind of gentle sadness for both of us, for the time we'd wasted, for the people we'd pretended to be. No, I said, there isn't. Not because I don't think you can change. Maybe you can, but because I don't want to be there while you figure it out. I don't want to be the test case for your growth. I want to be with someone who sees me clearly from the start, who doesn't need a dramatic revelation to understand my value. She nodded slowly, accepting it. I understand. I hope you do figure it out, I said, standing. I hope you learn to see people for who they really are instead of who you need them to be. I hope you build a life that doesn't require diminishing other people to feel secure in your own worth. But that's work you have to do for yourself, not for me. James, she looked up at me and in the fading light, she looked very young and very lost. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Really truly sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I hurt you. Because I wasted 4 years of your life living in a story I made up instead of the reality we could have had. I know, I said, and I did. Could hear the genuine remorse in her voice. The understanding that had finally broken through. But understanding doesn't undo damage. Regret doesn't rewind time. I left her there on the bench and walked home through the darkening park. And with each step, I felt lighter. Not because I'd gotten revenge or proven a point or won some imaginary competition, but because I'd finally let go of the anger, of the hurt, of the need for her to understand what she'd done. She understood now and it changed nothing. And that was okay. Friday arrived with the weight of significance. The acquisition meeting. Summit Capital, one of the biggest venture firms on the West Coast, sending their full team to evaluate whether Data Core was worth the kind of investment that would fundamentally reshape our trajectory. David and I prepared like generals planning a campaign. Slides refined until every word counted, projections verified and re-verified, questions anticipated, and answers rehearsed until they sounded natural instead of practiced. The team arrived at 2 p.m. sharp. 8 people in expensive suits carrying tablets and laptops and the kind of confidence that comes from having 9-figure budgets to deploy. The lead partner was a woman named Margaret Chen, mid-50s, gray hair cut sharp as a blade, eyes that saw through like it was made of glass. Mr. Castellan. She shook my hand with a grip that made it clear she expected to be taken seriously. Thank you for making time. We've been following your company with interest, and after the Forbes piece, that interest has intensified significantly. We settled into the conference room. Margaret's team spread out, pulling up data on their devices, preparing to dissect every claim we made. David and I stood at the front, the screen behind us showing our opening slide, the DataCore logo, and nothing else. Simple, confident. Before we start, Margaret said, I want to address the elephant in the room. You've had a very public personal situation in the last few weeks. Some of my partners are concerned about stability, about whether you're in the right headspace to scale a company. Can you speak to that? I'd expected this, had prepared for it, but standing there facing down the question of whether my personal life disqualified me from professional success, I felt something crystallize. Yes, I said I can. What happened in my personal life was the result of living in a narrative that wasn't true. I was hiding who I was, what I'd built, because I thought that's what maintaining a relationship required. When that narrative collapsed, it was painful, public, messy, but it was also necessary because you can't build something great while pretending to be less than you are. I advanced the slide. Now it showed our growth trajectory. Clean, undeniable. I spent 2 years building in this company in the shadows because I didn't want attention to corrupt what we were creating. I wanted the product to speak for itself before the story of the company became more important than the company itself. That period is over. We're ready to be visible, ready to scale, ready to become what we've always had the potential to be. Margaret leaned back, studying me. And you think you're ready to be the public face of a company that could be worth $500 million in 3 years? I don't think it. I know it. Because I've already done the hard part. Building something real without the benefit of attention or resources or validation. Scaling it with those things. That's just execution. Something shifted in the room. I could feel it. The way Margaret's team looked at each other, the subtle nods, the recalculation of risk and reward. Show us the rest, Margaret said. We presented for 90 minutes every metric, every projection, every piece of data that proved we weren't just a good story, but a good investment. David handled the technical details with the precision of someone who lived and breathed code. I handled the vision, the strategy, the picture of what we could become with the right resources. When we finished, Margaret stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city. You know what impressed me most about the Forbes article? She said without turning around. It wasn't the story about the party. It was the detail about how you'd been profitable from year one. How you'd bootstrapped everything, taken no outside money, maintained complete control while building something most startups need 20 million in funding just to attempt. She turned back to face us. That's rare. That level of discipline, that kind of patient capital creation, it tells me you're not just smart, you're strategic. And strategy is what separates companies that scale from companies that implode under the weight of their own growth. So, David asked, unable to help himself. What do you think? Margaret smiled. I think we're going to make you an offer, a significant one. My team will work up the details over the weekend and we'll have something formal by Tuesday, but I can tell you now we're looking at a valuation north of $100 red million with aggressive milestones that could double that within 18 months. 100 million. The number hung in the air like something holy. There's one condition, Margaret added. You need to be visible. Press conferences, thought leadership. The Forbes piece was a good start, but it can't be a one-off. You need to become someone people know, someone they trust with their data, their business, their future. Can you do that? I thought about the years I'd spent hiding. The careful invisibility, the fear that being seen would somehow corrupt what I was building. All of it gone now, burned away in a single night of truth-telling. Yes, I said, I can do that. Good. Margaret gathered her things, signaled her team to do the same. We'll be in touch. But Mr. Castellan, welcome to the big leagues. From here on out, everything you do matters. Everything you say gets scrutinized. Everyone wants a piece of what you've built. So protect it. Protect yourself. And don't let anyone make you small again. She left with her team and David and I stood alone in the conference room, both of us too stunned to speak. Finally, David broke the silence. Did that just happen? I think so. 100 million, James. $100 million. Do you understand what that means? I walked to the window, looked out at the city spread below us. Somewhere down there, she was probably starting over, figuring out who she was without the job, without the narrative she'd built. Somewhere else, Amanda and the others were probably talking about me, about her, about what happens when truth detonates comfortable lies. And here I was, 43 floors up, building something that mattered, being seen, being valued, being exactly who I'd always been, but had been too afraid to show. Yeah, I said. I do. It means we won. 3 weeks after the Forbes article, I stood backstage at a tech conference in San Francisco waiting to give my first keynote speech to an audience of 2,000 people. If you've ever experienced that particular brand of terror, knowing that in 5 minutes you'll walk onto a stage under lights bright enough to blind you and try to sound coherent while your heart attempts to escape through your throat. You understand why I was questioning every decision that had led me to this moment. The acquisition deal with Summit Capital had closed on Tuesday. The final number, $127 million, with performance milestones that could push it past $200 million within 2 years. David and I had both cried when we signed the papers. Not because we were saved, but because we couldn't quite believe it was real. 2 years ago, we'd been coding in his garage. Now, we were worth more money than either of us could conceptualize. But the money came with expectations. Margaret had been clear about that visibility leadership becoming the face of not just Data Core but of a new generation of founders who built differently, who valued sustainability over growth at any cost, who proved you could be successful without burning out or selling your soul. You're on in 3, the stage manager said, her voice crackling through my earpiece. I adjusted my lapel mic, rolled my shoulders, tried to remember the breathing exercises the speaking coach had taught me. Margaret had insisted on the coach. You need to look comfortable up there, natural, like you've been doing this your whole life. And I'd spent the last 2 weeks learning how to stand, how to gesture, how to modulate my voice for maximum impact. 2 minutes, my phone buzzed. A text from David. You've got this. Remember, they're here because they want to hear what you have to say. Just tell them the truth. The truth. That seemed to be my currency. Now, the thing people wanted from me, not polished corporate speak or carefully managed messaging, but the raw honesty of someone who'd lived through transformation and was willing to talk about it. 1 minute, head to the wings. I walked to the side of the stage, could hear the moderator introducing me. Built a company in complete secrecy, the Forbes profile that went viral. Please welcome James Castellan, CEO of DataOR Solutions. The applause started and I walked out into the lights. If you've ever had to be brave in public, you know that the first 30 seconds are the hardest. Your body wants to run. Your mind goes blank. Every instinct screams that you're about to fail spectacularly in front of everyone, But then you start talking and muscle memory takes over, and suddenly you're not standing on a stage in front of 2,000 strangers. You're just telling your story. I talked about building data core, about the decision to stay hidden, about the relationship that fell apart when truth collided with comfortable fiction, about what it means to be impressive in a world that confuses visibility with value. Noise with substance. For 2 years, I said, pacing the stage the way the coach had taught me, I lived 2 lives. The one everyone could see, which was carefully constructed to look ordinary, forgettable, safe, and the one I was building in private, which was anything but safe. It was risky and ambitious and probably a little bit crazy, but I kept it hidden because I was afraid of what would happen if people knew. I paused, let the silence build. The audience was completely still, focused. And then something happened that forced me to choose. Stay hidden and maintain a relationship built on false assumptions, or reveal everything and risk losing what I thought I wanted. I chose truth and it cost me. But here's what I learned. The things you lose when you choose honesty are the things that were never really yours to begin with. And what you gain, clarity, integrity, the freedom to be exactly who you are, that's worth more than any comfortable lie. The applause when I finished was thunderous. Questions followed about the company, about scaling, about advice for other founders. I answered them all with the same directness I brought to the speech. No corporate hedging, no carefully managed non-answers, just truth. Afterward, in the green room, a line of people waited to talk to me. Founders who wanted advice, investors exploring opportunities, journalists asking for interviews, and standing at the back of the line looking uncertain and out of place was Amanda. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She'd cut her hair short, was dressed more casually than I'd ever seen her. When our eyes met, she gave a small wave, tentative. I worked through the line, shaking hands and exchanging business cards and promising to follow up. Finally, it was just her. "Hi," she said. "I hope it's okay that I came. I saw you were speaking and I wanted to hear it. What you've been building." "It's fine. Did you enjoy the talk?" "It was incredible, honest, and powerful, and everything I would have expected from you if I had ever bothered to really see you." She shifted her weight, uncomfortable. "Can we talk just for a few minutes?" We found a quiet corner away from the crowd. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking from, gathering her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about the conversation we had." She started, "The one where I called you after the party where I was trying to apologize for my part and everything. And I realized I was still doing it wrong. Still making it about my guilt instead of about the actual damage. Okay. So, I want to say this clearly. I'm sorry for creating the environment where she felt comfortable diminishing you, for reinforcing her worst instincts, for never once asking you about your life, your dreams, what you were working toward. We were all complicit in treating you like you were less than you were. And that was wrong. Unforgivably wrong." She looked up at me, her eyes clear and direct. "And I want you to know that I've been doing work, therapy, actual examination of why I participate in that kind of toxicity with my friends. Why I think ranking people is appropriate. Why I confuse surface impressiveness with actual worth. That's good." I said, "Real work takes courage." "It does. And part of that work has been accepting that some damage can't be undone. That some relationships end and stay ended. And that's appropriate. She keeps texting me, asking me to help her get you back, to tell you she's changed, but I won't do it because I don't think she has changed. I think she's just gotten better at performing remorse." That landed like confirmation of something I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to articulate. "How is she doing?" I asked, surprising myself. I tried not to think about her, to let that chapter close completely. But curiosity was apparently harder to kill than feeling. "Not great. She's struggling to find work. People in the industry know what happened and her reputation is damaged. She's angry about it. Feels like she's being blackballed unfairly." But James, Amanda leaned forward. "She still doesn't really get it. She thinks the problem was getting caught, not what she did. And until she understands that fundamental difference, she's not going to change. That's not my problem to solve." "No, it's not. And I'm glad you know that." Amanda stood, preparing to leave. "I just wanted to tell you that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm sorry it took something so dramatic for that to happen. You deserved better from all of us." She left and I sat there alone with my coffee, thinking about visibility and recognition, and the strange fact that sometimes people only learn to see you after you've stopped needing them to. That night, I flew back home on a red eye, too wired to sleep. The cabin was dark except for the glow of the screens. People watching movies or working or just staring into space the way you do at 35,000 feet when the world feels both very close and impossibly far away. My phone had been in airplane mode since takeoff, but I pulled it out now, looked at the lock screen. The background was still that photo of the harbor, the one from before I'd met her. I'd kept it all this time, through everything. A reminder of who I'd been before it started disappearing myself for someone else's comfort. I opened my photos, scrolled back through the years, stopped at a picture from 2 weeks after we'd met. The two of us at a street festival, her laughing at something I'd said. Me looking at her like she was the answer to a question I'd been asking my whole life. We looked happy, young, completely unaware that we were building something on a foundation of assumptions that would eventually crack under the weight of unexplored truths. I deleted the photo, then the next one, then all of them, one by one, watching 4 years disappear into digital nothing. Not out of anger or spite, but out of simple recognition that holding on to evidence of something that never really existed was its own kind of lie. When I was done, my photo library felt lighter, cleaner, ready for new images, new memories, new chapters that hadn't been written yet. The plane touched down at 4 a.m. I took a car home through empty streets, watched the city sleep, and thought about transformation. About how you never realize you're in the middle of it until you come out the other side and look back at where you started. About how the person I'd been 3 months ago, careful, hidden, accommodating, felt like someone I'd read about in a book rather than someone I'd actually been. My apartment was dark and quiet when I let myself in. I didn't turn on the lights, just walked to the windows and looked out at the city, beginning to wake up. Delivery trucks making their rounds. Early morning joggers, the first buses running their routes. Life continuing in its ordinary way while mine had become extraordinary. My phone buzzed with a notification, an email from Margaret. Congratulations on the keynote. Already getting inquiries from companies that saw you speak. Let's talk about next steps Monday. You're officially on the map. On the map, visible. Known. Everything I'd been afraid of for so long. Now everything I was building toward. I thought about sending a response, then decided it could wait. Instead, I made coffee, carried it to the balcony, and watched the sun come up over the city. November in San Francisco, cold and clear. The kind of morning that makes you believe in new beginnings. My phone rang. David calling from his place across town. You awake, Bashishi? He asked. Yeah, just got in. Me, too. Couldn't sleep. Keep thinking about the deal. About what happens next? What has happened next? Whatever we want, man. That's the crazy part. We have resources now, capital, credibility. We can hire anyone, build anything, go anywhere. The only limit is imagination. I thought about that, about having no limits except the ones I chose to accept. About building not from a place of scarcity or fear, but from abundance and possibility. I want to build something that lasts. I said, not just a company that makes money. Something that changes how people think about data, about technology, about what's possible when you do things with integrity. That's ambitious. Yeah, but we've earned ambitious, haven't we? We have, David agreed. We really have. We talked for another hour, planning and dreaming and mapping out a future that felt both impossibly large and entirely within reach. When we finally hung up, the sun was fully up. The city alive with morning energy. I went inside, showered, changed into fresh clothes, and looked at myself in the mirror. Same face I'd always had, same eyes, same basic structure. But something fundamental had shifted. The way I stood, the way I held my head, the way I looked back at my own reflection without apology or hesitation. This was who I'd always been. I just finally stopped hiding it. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Claire Martinez from Forbes working on a follow-up piece about founders who've gone public after years in stealth mode. Interested in being part of it? I typed back, yes, send the details because this was my life now. Visible, public, exactly as impressive as I'd always been, just no longer asking permission to take up space. I grabbed my keys and headed to the office, ready for whatever came next. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of a building I just purchased, watching construction crews tear out walls to make space for DataCore's new headquarters. The building was in Somal, all glass and steel and possibility. The kind of structure that announced you'd arrived without having to say a word. 200 employees now. Offices opening in New York and Austin. Revenue projections that made my accountant nervous in the best possible way. If you've ever stood in the physical manifestation of a dream you didn't quite believe you deserved, you know that feeling. Not quite joy, not quite disbelief, something closer to recognition, like your life finally matching the interior version you'd been carrying around for years. Boss Sarah, our lead developer and now CTO, walked up with a tablet. The architect sent over the final renderings. Want to see? She pulled up the images. Open floor plans, collaborative spaces, a rooftop garden, Everything we talked about building if we ever had the resources. Now we did. It's perfect. I said, tell them to proceed. Will do, she hesitated. Also, there's someone in your temporary office. Says she knows you. Reception wasn't sure whether to let her up, but she seemed, I don't know, determined. My stomach tightened. What's her name? She didn't give one, just said it was important. I walked to the elevator, rode up to the 10th floor where we'd set up temporary operations while the building was being renovated. Through the glass door of my makeshift office, I could see her standing with her back to me, looking out the window at the city below. She'd lost weight. Her hair was different. Pulled back severely. She was wearing a black dress that looked expensive but somehow diminished her rather than elevated her. When she heard the door open, she turned. Hi, she said. I'm sorry to ambush you like this, but you blocked my number and you won't return emails and I needed to see you. I stayed by the door, didn't make this comfortable for either of us. How did you find me? It's not exactly a secret. Forbes, TechCrunch, Bloomberg, you're everywhere now. The company is everywhere. It's like you became exactly what I said you weren't. Except you already were, and I was just too blind to see it. If you came here for closure, I gave you that months ago. I know you did, but I didn't accept it. Not really. I kept thinking if I could just explain, if I could make you understand how sorry I am, how much I've changed, you'd give me another chance. She moved closer and I could see she'd been crying recently. Her eyes were red, her makeup imperfect. But that's not why I'm here. Not anymore. I'm here because I need to say something and then I need to let you go. Really let you go. Okay. She took a breath, studied herself. I've spent the last 6 months trying to understand what I did. Not just to you, but to myself. How I became someone who measures people like commodities. Who takes credit for things she didn't earn. Who tears down the person she supposedly loves to feel better about her own insecurities. And did you figure it out? Some of it? I grew up being told I had to be exceptional to matter. That being ordinary was the same as being invisible. So, I learned to make myself look exceptional by making everyone else look ordinary. And with you, it was easy because you were actively hiding how extraordinary you were. I didn't have to tear you down. You'd already done it to yourself. I just had to maintain the illusion. She wiped out her eyes. But here's what I finally understand. Real worth doesn't require diminishing other people. Real confidence doesn't need constant validation. And real love doesn't measure. It just sees clearly and chooses anyway. That's good insight. I said, I'm glad you're getting there. I am. But James, I'm not getting there fast enough. Or maybe I am, but it doesn't matter because the person I'm becoming is someone I should have been before I met you, before I hurt you. And that person you're with now. She stopped, caught herself. Sorry. The person you're going to be with someday, they're going to get the version of you that knows its worth, that doesn't hide, that takes up space without apology. And they'll never have to do the work of helping you see yourself clearly because you already do. What are you saying? I'm saying I lost my chance. I had 4 years to see you, to ask questions, to build something real, and I squandered it. Worse than squandered it. I actively destroyed it by choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. And now you're here building an empire and she gestured at herself. Emotion that encompassed loss and regret and hard-won understanding. I'm starting over trying to figure out who I am when I'm not taking credit for other people's work or ranking humans like their stock portfolios. I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition that she was finally doing the work, finally seeing clearly, even if that clarity came too late for us. I hope you figure it out, I said. I really do. I will or I won't. But either way, it's not your responsibility anymore. She picked up her purse, prepared to leave. There's one more thing I wanted you to know, that I've been telling people the truth. About what really happened. About who paid for what, about the company you were building while I was telling everyone you were mediocre. It's the least I can do. Correcting the record. Thank you. And James, I'm genuinely happy for you. For what you've built, for who you've become. You deserve all of it. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. You know what the worst part is? I look at what you've built and I realize I could have been part of this. Could have been your partner in building something extraordinary. But I was so busy being afraid of your potential that I never stopped to consider my own. And that's something I'll have to live with. We both will, I said, but living with it gets easier. Trust me. She nodded, smiled sadly, and left. I stood alone in the office for a long time after she was gone, looking out at the city, thinking about paths taken and not taken, about versions of life that could have been but weren't. Then I called David. She just came by, I said when he answered, and she finally gets it. Really gets it. But it doesn't change anything. Good. You moving on already have been, but yeah, officially now. No more looking back. Then let's look forward. I'm at the construction site for the Austin office. You should see this place, James. It's going to be incredible. We talked about expansion plans, about hiring and scaling, and the 1,000 ordinary miracles that make up extraordinary growth. When we hung up, I felt settled, complete, like I'd finally closed a door that had been hanging open for months, catching the wind, banging against its frame. That weekend, I drove up the coast. Needed space, air, distance from the city and the company, and the constant demands of being visible. I rented a house on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Nothing fancy, just a small place with big windows and a deck where you could watch the waves come in. I spent 2 days doing nothing, reading, walking the beach, sitting on the deck with coffee, and watching the light change. No phone calls, no emails, no interviews or meetings or decisions. Just silence and space and the sound of water hitting rocks. On Sunday morning, I woke before dawn and walked down to the beach. The sand was cold and damp. The sky that particular shade of purple-gray that comes right before sunrise. I was alone except for a few early runners. People drawn to the liminal space between night and day. If you've ever stood on a beach watching the sun come up, you know there's something about it that demands reflection. Maybe it's the scale. The ocean so vast, the sky so huge, yourself so small in comparison. Or maybe it's the promise of it. The way each sunrise is both repetition and renewal. The same sun but a different day. A new chance to be whoever you've decided to become. I thought about the last year, the relationship ending, the party, the revelation, the Forbes article and the acquisition and the keynote speeches and all the ways my life had transformed from invisible to impossible to miss. Thought about the person I'd been when this started. Careful, hidden, accommodating, and the person I'd become. Not different exactly, just unobscured. The real version finally matching the visible one. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Against my better judgment, I pulled it out. A text from Margaret. Board wants to discuss international expansion. Preliminary conversations with partners in London and Singapore. You interested in building this thing global? Global. The word felt too big to hold, too expansive to comprehend. But then again, 6 months ago, successful had felt that way. A year ago, visible had seemed impossible. And here I was standing on a beach watching the sun rise over an ocean I'd crossed multiple times in the last month for business meetings. Very interested, I typed back, "Let's talk Monday." The sun broke the horizon and the whole world turned gold. I put my phone away and just stood there watching the light spread across the water, feeling the warmth on my face, understanding in a way I hadn't quite grasped before that this was it. This was the life I'd built by refusing to stay small. By choosing truth over comfort, by believing that being seen was worth the risk of judgment. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Turned to see a woman jogging always, headphones in, focused on her run. She didn't look at me. Didn't register my presence. And somehow that felt perfect because visibility didn't mean everyone had to see you. It just meant you stopped hiding. Stopped asking permission to exist at full volume. Stopped making yourself small so other people could feel big. I walked back to the house as the beach filled with people. Families setting up for the day. Surfers wading into the waves. Couples walking hand in hand through the morning light. Life continuing in its ordinary way while mine had become extraordinary. Not because I changed who I was, but because I'd finally stopped pretending to be who I wasn't. Monday morning, I drove back to the city. Traffic was heavy on Highway 1. The kind where you move in increments, starting and stopping. The ocean visible in glimpses between trees and hillsides. I used the time to think about what came next. London, Singapore, markets we'd only dreamed about accessing. The kind of growth that would require everything I'd learned about building with integrity, about maintaining values while scaling, about being visible without losing yourself in the visibility. My phone rang through the car speakers. Claire Martinez. James, hi. Working on the follow-up piece. Want to ask you something off the record first. Okay. How does it feel being the poster child for revenge done right? Because that's how people are talking about you. Like you're proof that the best revenge is living well. I thought about that, about whether what I'd done was revenge or just correction, whether there was a difference. I don't think it was revenge, I said finally. Revenge requires a wanting someone to suffer. I didn't want that. I just wanted the truth to be visible. I wanted people to see what had been there all along. And if that caused discomfort for people who'd been comfortable with lies, that's not revenge. That's just consequence. Can I quote that? Yeah, you can quote it. We talked for another 20 minutes, and by the time we hung up, I was back in the city, pulling into the parking garage of the building that would soon be our permanent home. I rode the elevator up, walked through the temporary office, felt the energy of people building something that mattered. David looked up from his desk. Good weekend. The best. Cleared my head. Ready for what comes next. Good. Because what comes next is insane, but in the best possible way. We spent the rest of the day in meetings planning expansion, discussing hiring, making decisions that would shape the next 5 years. And through it all, I felt steady, grounded, like I'd finally learned to stand in my own worth without needing external validation to know it was real. That night, standing in my apartment with the city lights spread below me like a map of possibility, I thought about what I'd learned about visibility and worth and the difference between being seen and being known. About how the hardest thing isn't building something extraordinary. It's believing you deserve to claim what you've built. If you've ever had to choose between being loved and being yourself, you know there's only one real choice. And if you're brave enough to make it, if you're willing to stand in the full light of truth, even when it costs you comfort, you might lose things you thought you needed. But what you gain, clarity, integrity, the freedom to be exactly who you are, that's worth more than any comfortable lie. I walked to the window, pressed my hand against the gases, felt the city humming with life on the other side, and I knew with the kind of certainty that can only come from having survived your own truth-telling that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, visible, valued, free. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever made yourself small for someone else's comfort, remember this. The truth will always find a way to the surface. And when it does, the only question is whether you'll have the courage to stand in it. Choose truth. Choose yourself. Choose to be exactly as impressive as you've always been. The world will adjust.
And that concludes this story. That was a pretty wild one if you ask me. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Now, let's get right into the next story. It's titled,
My 8-year-old son pulled me aside. Dad, promise you'll stay calm. I nodded, worried. Mommy's friend, the police officer, came to my school. He handed me a sealed envelope. He said to give this only to you. Don't let Mommy see it. I tore it open. It was terrifying. I grabbed my son and drove away as fast as I could. Chapter 1, The Quiet Life. Jack Beck wiped the grease from his hands, staring at the disassembled motorcycle engine spread across his garage workbench. 38 years old, 6'2", with the kind of lean muscle that came from discipline rather than vanity. He'd spent the last decade trying to build something that resembled normal. The scar tissue running along his left forearm, courtesy of a roadside bomb in Kandahar, served as a permanent reminder that normal was a luxury he'd earned the hard way. Dad, you in there? His son's voice cut through the silence. 8-year-old Kerr had his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes that had seemed too much for someone who still believed in Santa Claus. In the garage, buddy, Jack called back, setting down his wrench. Kurt appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, but something was off. The kid's usual boundless energy was gone, replaced by something Jack recognized from his years in military intelligence. Fear poorly masked as calm. How was school? Jack asked, studying his son's face. Fine. The word came too quickly. Kurt glanced over his shoulder toward the house. Through the garage's side window, Jack could see his wife Rosie's car in the driveway. She was home early. Jack had met Rosie Dunn 10 years ago at a veteran support group. She'd been a volunteer, warm and patient with broken soldiers, trying to piece themselves back together. They'd married within a year. For a while, it had been good. She'd given him Kurt, given him a reason to wake up without reaching for the bottle. But the last 18 months had opened cracks in the foundation. Late nights at her book club, hush phone calls, a new distance in her eyes. You sure everything's okay? Jack crouched down to his son's level. Kurt bit his lip, a habit he'd picked up from Rosie. Can we talk? Just us? Jack's instincts sharpened. He learned to read people in places where the wrong assessment could cost lives. His son was terrified. Let's take a walk, Jack said, standing. He called toward the house. Rosie, taking Kurt to the park for a bit. A muffled acknowledgement came from inside. They didn't wait for more. The park was 3 blocks away, a modest stretch of grass with aging playground equipment. Jack led Kurt to a bench far from the handful of other parents supervising their kids. The afternoon sun cast long shadows, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Dad, Kurt finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Promise you'll stay calm. Every alarm bell in Jack's mind started ringing. Those were the words people used before delivering devastating news. He'd heard them in briefings before learning about casualties, before receiving divorce papers from soldiers whose marriages hadn't survived deployment. I promise, Jack said, though his jaw was already tightening. What's going on? Kurt reached into his backpack with trembling hands. Mommy's friend, the police officer. He came to my school today. Harvey Moran. Jack's hands clenched involuntarily. Harvey was a detective with the city police, late 40s, divorced, the kind of cop who'd learned to work the system rather than serve it. He'd been coming around for the last 6 months, supposedly because he and Rosie had gone to high school together. Jack had tolerated it because Rosie insisted they were just old friends, but his gut had been screaming otherwise. He pulled me out of class, Kirk continued. Said, he had something for you. Made me promise. His voice cracked. Made me promise not to tell Mom. Said it was important that you needed to see it first. Kurt pulled out a sealed envelope. It was standard letter size but thick. Jack's name was written across the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Neat, careful, the kind of penmanship that belonged to someone who paid attention to details. Did Harvey say anything else? Jack asked, taking the envelope. He said. Kurt's eyes filled with tears. He said you'd understand that you'd know what to do. Dad, what's happening? Is Mom okay? Are you guys getting divorced? Jack pulled his son close, feeling the boy's small frame shake against his chest. Hey, look at me. He tilted Kurt's chin up. Whatever this is, we'll handle it. You and me. Okay. Kurt nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. But I need you to do exactly what Harvey said. Jack continued, keeping his voice steady. Don't tell your mom about this. Not yet. Can you do that for me? Another nod. Good man. Jack ruffled his son's hair, then stood. Let's get you home. I need to read this. Jack waited until Kurt was inside, safely distracted by video games before returning to the garage. He locked the door behind him and sat on his workbench stool, studying the envelope under the harsh fluorescent lights. The weight of it was wrong, too heavy for a simple letter. He turned it over, checking for any signs of tampering, then carefully opened it. Inside were 3 items. A handwritten note, a USB drive, and a series of photographs. Jack read the note first. Beck, you don't know me, but I know what's about to happen to you. My name is Neil Alvarado. I'm Harvey Moran's partner. Or I was until 3 days ago. I'm writing this from a hospital bed. Car accident, they'll say brake failure. But I checked those brakes myself the morning it happened. Harvey's dirty. Has been for years. Protection rackets, evidence tampering, the works. I got too close, started asking questions, and now I'm looking at 6 months of physical therapy if I'm lucky. But that's not why I'm writing you. Your wife has been sleeping with Harvey for 8 months. I'm sorry. I know that's not easy to hear, but it's worse than that. They're not just having an affair. They're planning to rob you blind and frame you for something that'll put you away for life. The USB drive has everything I've managed to collect. Bank statements, recorded conversations, Harvey's notes. He's been working with your wife to set up a scheme involving her access to the military veterans fund she manages. They're planning to steal $2.3 million and make it look like you did it. Your military background, your security clearance, your access to her accounts, it's all going to point straight at you. The frame-up goes down in 4 days. They're going to discover the theft, and Harvey will make sure the evidence trail leads to your door. With his badge and your wife's testimony, you won't stand a chance. I couldn't go to internal affairs. Harvey's got too many friends there. I couldn't go to the FBI. By the time they investigate, you'll already be arrested and the damage will be done. So, I'm giving you this. What you do with it is your choice. I'd disappear if I were you. Take your kid and run. But if you're the man I think you are, the kind of man who survives Kandahar and comes home to build a life, then maybe you want to fight. If you do, be smart. Harvey's dangerous when cornered. And your wife, she's colder than you think. Good luck, Neil. Alvarado. Jack read the note 3 times, his expression never changing. Then he looked at the photographs. They showed Rosie and Harvey together at restaurants in Harvey's car entering a motel on the outskirts of town. The timestamps range from 6 months ago to as recent as 2 days ago. The final photo made his blood run cold. Rosie and Harvey standing in what looked like a bank vault. Both of them smiling at something off camera. Jack set the photos down carefully and picked up the USB drive. His hand was steady, the same steadiness that had served him during firefights and hostage negotiations. Panic was a luxury for people who had the privilege of falling apart. He learned long ago that survival required clarity. He inserted the USB drive into his laptop and opened the files. What he found over the next hour painted a picture of betrayal so calculated, so thorough that it almost impressed him from a tactical standpoint. Harvey had been meticulously documenting a fake trail emails from Jack's computer to offshore accounts, forged signatures, planted evidence in his home office. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Used Jack's military intelligence background and his wife's position to create an unshakable narrative of a desperate veteran turned thief. There were audio recordings, too. Jack played one. Harvey's voice. The beauty of it is everyone will believe it. War hero comes home with PTSD. Can't adjust to civilian life. Sees an opportunity through his wife's work. It writes itself. Roz's voice cold and calculated. What about Kurt? Harvey, what about him? He'll go to your sister. You'll play the devastated wife. Testify against your husband. After the trial, we wait a year, then suddenly your grief turns into something new. We can be together, and with the money and the Caymans, we can live anywhere we want. Rosie, after a pause, and if Jack figures it out before the frame up, Harvey laughing, then we move to plan B, domestic dispute gone wrong. I respond to your 911 call. Find him threatening you with a gun. Clean shoot. Either way, he's gone and we get what we want. Jack closed the laptop. His face remained impassive, but his mind was already working through scenarios, calculating angles, planning moves 3 steps ahead. The same skill set that had kept his team alive in hostile territory. For days until they made their move. For days to dismantle everything they'd built and ensure they paid for it. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. Merle Lamb. A gruff voice answered. Merle, it's Jack Beck. I need a favor. A big one. There was a pause. Merle had served under Jack in Afghanistan. Saved his life during that roadside bomb. They kept in touch after discharge. Though Merle had gone into a different line of work, private security and investigation for corporate clients. Name it, Merle said simply. I need surveillance equipment, a safe location, and your particular set of skills. And I need it tonight. You in trouble? Not yet, Jack said, looking at the photograph spread across his workbench. But someone's about to be. Chapter 2, The Investigation. Jack Beck spent that night in his garage. The glow of his laptop screen casting sharp shadows across his face. He'd sent Rosie a text claiming he needed to finish an urgent client report, a plausible excuse given his work as a security consultant. She'd responded with a thumbs up emoji, no questions asked. That alone told him everything about the state of their marriage. By midnight, Merle Lamb arrived in an unmarked van. Merle was built like a bulldog, shorter than Jack, but twice as wide, with a shaved head and knuckles scarred from a youth spent boxing in Detroit. He'd traded his military fatigues for expensive suits. But underneath the corporate polish was still the same Marine who dragged Jack from a burning vehicle while taking fire. You look like hell, Merle said, setting down 2 large equipment cases. Feel worse? Jack helped him unload. Thanks for coming. You said someone's trying to frame you for embezzlement. That the short version? That's the generous version. Jack handed him the envelope. Read it, then we'll talk. While Merle absorbed the contents, Jack pulled up the USB files again. He'd spent hours analyzing them. And something had been bothering him, a detail that didn't fit. Jesus, Merle muttered, finishing the note. Your wife and a dirty cop. That's dark even for my line of work. Look at this. Jack pointed to the screen, pulling up a series of bank records. Neil says they're planning to steal $2.3 million from the Veterans Fund, but these backdated transactions, they show preliminary transfers going back 14 months. Rosie only took over as fund manager 10 months ago. Merle leaned in, eyes narrowing. So either Neil's timeline is wrong or someone else is involved, someone who had access before Rosie. Jack switched to another file, a personnel roster for the Mountain Ridge Veteran Support Foundation where Rosie worked. Her predecessor was a woman named Louise Hughes. She resigned abruptly right before Rosie got the position. No forwarding address, no social media presence since she left. You think she's part of this? I think she's either part of it or she found out and got scared. Jack pulled up a photo of Louise, a severe-looking woman in her 50s with steel gray hair. Either way, we need to find her. Merle cracked his knuckles. I'll have my people on it by morning. What else? Harvey Moran. Jack brought up a police personnel file he'd accessed using credentials from his consulting work. Technically a gray area, but he'd stopped caring about technicalities. 17 years on the force, decorated, but look at his financials. He's drowning in debt. Divorce cleaned about 5 years ago, and he's been living beyond his means ever since. That's motive. Classic corruption story. Merle agreed. Needs money. Has access to power. Finds an opportunity. Except I need proof that'll stand up. Neil's evidence is good, but a defense attorney would tear it apart as hearsay from a disgruntled partner. I need Harvey to hang himself. Merle opened one of the equipment cases, revealing an array of surveillance devices. Then let's give him the rope. Over the next 2 days, Jack moved with the precision of a chess player setting pieces on a board. He maintained his routine. Breakfast with Kurt, work calls, dinner with Rosie. While Merle's team worked in the shadows, they planted listening devices in Roz's car and office. They installed miniature cameras in Harvey's apartment building lobby and garage. They tracked both of their movements, building a detailed pattern of their activities. And Jack learned to wear a mask. "You've been quiet lately," Rosie said over dinner on the second night. She'd made lasagna, his favorite, ironically. Or perhaps not ironically. Perhaps it was part of the performance. The devoted wife playing her role until the moment came to destroy him. "Big project at work," Jack replied, cutting into his food. Across the table, Kurt was pushing food around his plate, shooting nervous glances at his father. "Nothing to worry about," Rosie smiled. It was the same smile she'd given him when they'd married. But now Jack could see the calculation behind it. How long had she been acting? When had the woman he'd loved become this? "I've been thinking," she said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Her fingers were cold. "Maybe we should plan a vacation. Just the three of us. Get away for a while." After the frame up, Jack thought but didn't say. Instead, he squeezed her hand and forced warmth into his voice. "That sounds nice. What are you thinking?" "Somewhere warm. Caribbean, maybe." She was testing him. He realized, looking for any sign that he knew. "Let me finish this project first," he said. "Then we'll talk about it." That night, after Rosie was asleep, Jack slipped out to meet Merle at a diner on the edge of town. It was nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, and the place was empty, except for a tired waitress and a trucker nursing black coffee. "We got something," Merle said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Your wife met with someone this afternoon." "Not Harvey." Jack looked at the surveillance photo. It showed Rosie sitting in a park with a man Jack didn't recognize. Mid-30s, expensive suit, the kind of polished appearance that suggested money and influence. Who is he? Julian Parker, lawyer, corporate type. But here's where it gets interesting. Merle swiped to another image. He also represents Harvey Moran in his divorce proceedings. And get this, he's the registered agent for 3 shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Shell companies that received wire transfers from the Veterans Fund over the last year. Jack felt the pieces clicking into place. So, it's not just Harvey and Rosie. Parker's the money man. He's been helping them set up the offshore accounts. More than that, Merle pulled up another file. "Remember Louise Hughes, the former fund manager? I found her. She's living under a different name in Oregon. My contact up there had a conversation with her this morning. She's willing to talk, and she says Julian Parker approached her 2 years ago. Wanted her to help skim money from the fund. When she refused, she started receiving threats. Anonymous letters, dead rats in her mailbox, the works. She quit and ran." Jack's jaw tightened, so they needed someone they could control. Enter Rosie. "Looks like it. Harvey probably vouched for her. Told Parker she could be manipulated. The affair was icing on the cake. Gave them another layer of control." Jack stared at the photo of Julian Parker. Here was the puppet master, the one pulling Harvey and Rosie strings. And suddenly the scope of this thing became clear. This wasn't just about stealing from Veterans Fund. This was a systematic operation, and he'd become a convenient scapegoat. "There's something else," Merle said quietly. "Neil Alvarado, I visited him in the hospital today." "How is he?" "Bad. Real bad. But he told me something he didn't put in the note." Merle hesitated. "Harvey's plan B, the one where he shows up and shoots you during a domestic disturbance. Parker's been pushing for that from a start, says it's cleaner, less chance of exposure. Harvey's been resisting because he doesn't want to risk an investigation into the shooting, but Parker's getting impatient." Jack's expression didn't change, but his mind was already adjusting his timeline. If Parker was pushing Harvey to move to violence, then the 4-day window might be optimistic. "We need to accelerate," Jack said. "How fast can you give me a meeting with Louise Hughes?" "She's already on a plane. She'll be here tomorrow morning." "Good." Jack pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to let them think their plan is working. We're going to give them exactly what they want right up until the moment we take everything from them." Merle grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. "Now you're talking my language." Chapter 3. The Trap. Louise Hughes looked like a woman who'd spent 2 years glancing over her shoulder. She sat across from Jack and Merle's office, a nondescript building in an industrial park, wringing her hands and jumping at every sound from the street outside. "Thank you for coming," Jack said, keeping his voice gentle. He'd interviewed enough traumatized witnesses to know that Louise needed reassurance, not interrogation. "I almost didn't," she admitted. Her voice was raspy from years of smoking. "When your friend found me, I thought they'd sent someone to finish what they started. They don't know you're here. You're safe." Louise laughed bitterly. "Am I? You don't know these people. Julian Parker. He's not just some lawyer. He's got connections. Police, judges, politicians. That's how he knew he could get away with this." "Tell me everything," Jack said. "Start from the beginning." Over the next hour, Louise painted a picture of systematic corruption. Julian Parker had been operating his scheme for years, moving money through the Veterans Fund and other nonprofit organizations he'd infiltrated. The amounts were always small enough to avoid immediate detection, but over time they added up to millions. "He approached me at a fundraising gala," Louise said. "Very smooth, very charming. Said he was impressed with my work, that he wanted to help the foundation grow. Next thing I knew, he was suggesting creative accounting to maximize our resources. When I realized what he was really proposing, I tried to back out. That's when the threat started." She nodded. "At first, it was subtle. Hang-up calls, my car getting keyed. Then it escalated. Someone broke into my house while I was sleeping and left a note on my pillow. It said, 'Next time you won't wake up.' That's when I knew I had to disappear." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Louise's laugh was hollow. "Because Harvey Moran was one of the people threatening me. He showed up at my house in uniform. Told me that if I made any accusations, he'd make sure I was the one who got investigated. With his badge and Parker's lawyers, who would believe me?" Jack glanced at Merle, who was recording the conversation. This was gold, but it still wasn't enough. They needed something that would crack the whole operation open. "Louise," Jack said carefully. "Do you still have any documentation? Anything that could prove Parker's involvement?" She reached in her purse and pulled out a USB drive. "I kept copies of everything. Bank statements, emails, memos. I was too scared to use them, but I couldn't bring myself to destroy them either." Jack took the drive like it was made of gold. "This is exactly what we need." "What are you going to do?" Louise asked. "I'm going to give them what they want," Jack said. "And then I'm going to destroy them." That afternoon, Jack put the first phase of his counter-operation into motion. He created a series of digital breadcrumbs, emails from his computer to offshore accounts, searches for money laundering techniques in his browser history, encrypted files on his hard drive that would look damning if discovered. It was a mirror image of the frame update plan for him, except he was building it himself with one crucial difference. He had detailed documentation of every step timestamped and stored with Merle's security team. "You're making yourself look guilty," Merle observed as he watched Jack work. "That's the idea. When they come for me, they're going to find exactly what they expect. But here's the thing. The evidence is too good, too perfect. Any decent forensic accountant will be able to tell it was planted, and you're betting they won't look that closely. I'm betting their arrogance won't let them consider that possibility." Jack typed another line of code. "Harvey and Rosie think they're the ones running a con. Parker thinks he's untouchable. None of them will believe I could outplay them." Merle shook his head admiringly. "You're a cold son of A, you know that. I learned from the best." Jack had spent years in military intelligence learning how to run double agents, how to turn enemies' strengths into weaknesses. This was just another operation, except the stakes were personal. That evening, Jack took Kurt to the movies, a superhero film the kid had been begging to see. They ate too much popcorn and laughed at the action sequences, and for 2 hours, Jack let himself pretend everything was normal. "Dad," Kurt said as they walked back to the car. "Are you and Mom going to be okay?" Jack stopped, crouching down to his son's eye level. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the boy's worried face. "I need you to trust me," Jack said. "Things are going to get complicated for a little while. But I promise you, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, I'm going to make sure you're safe and taken care of. Okay?" Kurt threw his arms around his father's neck. "I love you, Dad. I love you, too, buddy." Jack held his son tight, feeling the weight of what was coming. Then he stood, taking Kurt's hand. "Come on, let's get home." The next morning, exactly 4 days after Jack had received Neil Alvarado's envelope, everything came to a head. Jack was in his home office when he heard car doors slamming outside. Through the window, he saw Harvey Moran and 3 other police officers approaching his house. Right on schedule. Rosie appeared in the office doorway. Her face a mask of concern. "Jack, there are police here. What's going on?" Jack looked at his wife. Really looked at her. Had she always been capable of this level of deception? Or had desperation turned her into someone new? "I don't know," he said. And in that moment, he gave her one last chance. "Rosie, if there's something you need to tell me, anything at all, now would be the time. For just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, guilt, but then it was gone, replaced by perfect confusion. What are you talking about? The doorbell rang. Jack stood, straightening his shoulders. Let them in. Harvey Moran filled the doorway, his badge prominently displayed. 3 uniformed officers flanked him, hands resting casually near their weapons. Jack Beck. Harvey's voice was professionally neutral, but Jack could see the anticipation in his eyes. This was it. The moment Harvey had been planning for. That's me. I have a warrant for your arrest. Embezzlement and wire fraud. Harvey pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Roz's performance was flawless. Shock, indignation, fear. If Jack hadn't known better, he might have believed her. There must be some mistake. Ma'am, we have evidence that your husband has been stealing from the veterans fund your organization manages. Over $2 million transferred to offshore accounts. That's impossible. Jack would never. The transfers were initiated from his computer, Harvey continued stone-faced. We have email records, digital signatures, everything we need. I'm sorry, Mrs. Beck, but your husband is facing serious federal charges. Jack extended his hands for the cuffs. As Harvey snapped them closed, Jack leaned in slightly and whispered, "How's Neil doing?" Harvey's face went blank for just a fraction of a second. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but Jack saw it. So the moment Harvey realized something was wrong. I don't know what you're talking about, Harvey said, but his voice had lost its certainty. No. Jack smiled, a cold, predatory expression. That's interesting because I have a lot to talk about and I think you're going to want to hear every word. As they led him out to the patrol car, Jack glanced back at his house. Kurt was watching from an upstairs window, his small face pressed against the glass. Jack gave him a subtle nod. Everything was going according to plan. The trap had been set. Now it was time to spring it. Chapter 4. The Gambit. The interrogation room was deliberately uncomfortable. Metal chairs, fluorescent lights, one-way mirror. Jack had been sitting there for 6 hours, occasionally visited by various detectives trying to get him to talk. He'd said nothing except to request his lawyer. What the police didn't know was that his lawyer was actually a federal agent Merle had connections with, a woman named Candace Terry from the FBI's white-collar crime division. She'd been investigating Julian Parker for 3 years on unrelated charges and was very interested in what Jack had to offer. When Candace finally entered the interrogation room, she played her part perfectly. Mid-40s, sharp suit, briefcase, the image of a corporate defense attorney. Mr. Beck, I'm Candace Terry. Your friend Merle Lamb retained my services. She set her briefcase on the table and turned to the detective who escorted her in. I need time with my client alone. The detective hesitated. We have questions and Mr. Beck will answer them in due time after he's consulted with counsel unless you'd like me to start filing motions about improper procedure. The detective left, but Jack knew Harvey Moran would be watching from behind the mirror. Candace sat down and pulled out a legal pad purely for show. What she actually slid across to Jack was a small electronic device that would scramble any listening equipment. We're clear, she said quietly. You have about 10 minutes before they get suspicious. Jack leaned forward. How much did Merle tell you? Everything. And I've been making calls. Your evidence checks out. Julian Parker is dirty. Harvey Moran is dirty. And your wife is in the middle of it. But here's the problem. The frame-up is good. Really good. If we go to trial based solely on Neil Alvarado's testimony and Louise Hughes's records, a jury might not buy it. What do you need? I need one of them a flip. Preferably Harvey. He's the weak link. Parker's too smart and too insulated. And your wife? Candace paused. Your wife is cold enough that I don't think she'll break under pressure. Jack had already come to the same conclusion. So, we make Harvey flip. Ow. By convincing him that Parker's about to throw him under the bus. Jack pulled out a photo from Candace's briefcase, one they prepared in advance. It showed Julian Parker meeting with another man at a coffee shop. This is Santos Shaw, an attorney who specializes in negotiating plea deals. Merle had them photographed together this morning. Harvey doesn't know Santos is actually one of your undercover agents. Candace smiled slowly. You want to make Harvey think Parker is cutting a deal without him. Exactly. Harvey is smart enough to know that in any conspiracy, the first person to cooperate gets the best deal. If he thinks Parker is about to leave him holding the bag, he'll race to the FBI to save himself. And what about your wife? Jack's expression hardened. Leave her to me. They put the plan in motion immediately. Candace arranged for Jack to be released on bail. Surprisingly easy, she explained. When you have an FBI agent pulling strings. Harvey was furious. Jack learned later, but he couldn't override a federal agent without raising questions. Jack went home to find Rosie waiting. She played the concerned wife perfectly, even posting on social media about the terrible misunderstanding and how she stood by her husband. It was a masterful performance. Jack, she threw her arms around him as soon as he walked in the door. Thank God. I've been so worried. Your lawyer says this is all a mistake. That someone must have hacked your computer. Where's Kurt? Jack interrupted. And my sisters, I thought it would be better if he didn't. If he wasn't here for all this. She pulled back, studying his face. Are you okay? You seem what? Different. There was something in her eyes now. Uncertainty. She was trying to read him, trying to figure out if he suspected anything. I've been arrested for a crime. I didn't commit, Jack said flatly. Different feels appropriate. They stared at each other, and Jack wondered if she could see through his mask the way he'd learned to see through hers. For a moment, he almost wished she would confess, that she would give him some explanation that made sense. But then the moment passed and she turned away. I made dinner, she said. You must be hungry. They ate in silence. Jack watched Rosie push food around her plate, saw the way she checked her phone every few minutes. She was texting someone, probably Harvey, probably panicking that their carefully constructed plan was falling apart. After dinner, Jack excused himself to his office. He had work to do. At midnight, Jack received a text from Merle. Package delivered. The package was a carefully crafted piece of disinformation. Through a series of anonymous tips and leaked documents, they'd made sure Harvey saw photos of Julian Parker meeting with Santo Shaw. They'd included transcripts of fake conversations suggesting Parker was negotiating immunity in exchange for testifying against his co-conspirators. The bait was set now, but they had to wait. They didn't wait long. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Jack's burner phone rang. It was Candace Terry. Harvey just walked in the FBI field office. She said he's asking to make a deal. Jack felt a surge of satisfaction. Don't make it easy for him. Make him earn it. Oh, don't worry. We're going to squeeze every drop out of him. Jack hung up and allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. Harvey was about to give them everything they needed to take down Julian Parker, which left only one loose end. Rosie. Jack found her in their bedroom, awake and staring at her phone. When she saw him, she quickly locked the screen. Can't sleep? He asked. No. Her voice was tight. This whole thing, it's been a nightmare. Has it? Jack sat on the edge of the bed. Rosie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She tensed. What? Are you having an affair? The question hung in the air between them. Jack watched her face cycle through emotions. Surprise, indignation, fear before settling on something like sorrow. Jack, why would you ask me that? Because I've been paying attention. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way you look at me like I'm someone you're trying to figure out rather than someone you love. For a moment, he thought she might actually tell the truth. But then she shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. I'm not having an affair, she said. I love you. I know things have been strange lately, but that's because she hesitated because I've been worried about you, about us. I thought maybe we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. It was a good lie. If Jack hadn't known better, he might have believed it. Okay, he said simply. I believe you. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, Jack. I promise. But I need you to do something for me. He pulled out a document. Divorce papers he'd had Merle draw up. I need you to sign these. Her relief evaporated. What? Why? Because if I'm going to beat these charges, I can't have my personal life complicating things. My lawyer says it'll look better if we're legally separated. Shows the prosecution they can't use you against me. It was complete nonsense, of course, but Rosie didn't know enough about legal strategy to question it. Jack, I don't want to get divorced. It's temporary, just until this is over. Please, Rosie, I need you to trust me. She stared at the papers, her mind clearly racing. Jack could see her weighing options, calculating angles. Finally, she picked up a pen for you, she said, signing her name. Because I love you, Jack took the papers, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Thank you. This will make everything easier. He left the bedroom before she could see his expression. Chapter 5, The Confession. Harvey Moran's cooperation was a beautiful thing to watch. Over the next 48 hours, he gave the FBI everything. Detailed records of the embezzlement scheme, evidence of Julian Parker's criminal network, testimony about how they planned to frame Jack. But Candace Terry wanted more. She wanted Harvey to wear a wire. Parker doesn't know I've flipped yet, Harvey explained during a meeting at the FBI field office. Jack was there watching through a video feed from another room. He's been calling me, wanted to meet, says we need to discuss damage control, then meet with him. Candace said get him to implicate himself on tape. He's not stupid. If I wear a wire and he finds it, he won't find it. She slid a tiny device across the table. Latest technology, completely undetectable, and we'll have agents positioned nearby in case things go south. Harvey picked up the device, his hand shaking slightly. For all his corruption, he wasn't a brave man, just a greedy one who'd gotten it over his head. What about Rosie? Harvey asked. Is she cooperating? Not yet, Candace said. But she will. Through the video feed, Jack watched Harvey's face carefully. There was something there. Not quite guilt, but close. A hint of conscience buried under layers of justification and self-preservation. She's not a bad person, Harvey said quietly. She got desperate. Her gambling debts were crushing her, and Parker knew it. He used it against her, promised he could make her problems disappear if she helped him access the Veterans Fund. Jack's hands clenched. He hadn't known about gambling debts. Rosie had hidden them well. And you? Candace asked. What's your excuse? Harvey laughed bitterly. Same as everyone. I guess I needed money. Parker offered it. I told myself it was just this once, just to get back on my feet after the divorce. But one time became two became three. He shook his head. You ever notice how easy it is to justify things to yourself? By the end, I'd convinced myself I wasn't really hurting anyone. It was just money from a fund that had plenty. Veterans were still getting their benefits. No real harm done. Except you were planning to frame an innocent man. Candace said coldly. That was Parker's idea. I didn't want to, but you went along with it. You were ready to destroy Jack Beck's life. Send him to prison, traumatize his son, and for what? Money. Harvey had no answer to that. Watching from the other room, Jack felt a strange absence of anger. He'd expected to feel rage at Harvey's admissions, but instead there was only a cold calculation. Harvey was a tool useful for taking down Parker and building the case against Rosie, but ultimately just another corrupt cop who'd made bad choices. The real anger Jack felt was reserved for Rosie. She'd gambled away their security, lied to him for months, planned to destroy him, and through it all, she'd smiled and pretended to be the loving wife. That kind of betrayal deserves something special. The meeting between Harvey and Julian Parker took place in an upscale restaurant downtown. Harvey wore the FBI's wire, and a team of agents watched from various positions, some posing as diners, others positioned in a surveillance vent outside. Jack listened to the feed from Candace's office. Merle standing beside him. Can't believe they let Beck out on bail. Parker's smooth voice came through the speakers. That's unexpected. His lawyer's good, Harvey replied. Jack could hear the tension in his voice. Federal agent, apparently. She's already poking holes in the evidence. That's impossible. We covered everything. Did we? Because I'm starting to think maybe we rushed this. Maybe we should have waited, been more careful. There was a pause. Jack imagined Parker studying Harvey, trying to read him. You're not getting cold feet. Are you, Harvey? Parker's tone had shifted. Friendly exterior stripped away to reveal something harder underneath. I'm being realistic. If Beck's lawyer finds even one thread to pull, the whole thing could unravel. And if it does, we stick to the plan. We have documentation. We have evidence. We have everything we need. Beck's military background makes him the perfect scapegoat. Even if he fights the charges, the publicity alone will destroy him. And what about Rosie? What about her? She plays the devastated wife, helps the prosecution, and after Beck's convicted, she gets her share of the money. Everyone wins except Beck. Except Beck. Parker agreed. But that's his problem, not ours. Harvey, listen to me. You're a soldier in this. You follow orders, you do your job, and you get paid. That's how this works. Don't start developing a conscience now. In Candace's office, Jack listened to Parker condemn himself with every word. The FBI agent was smiling. We've got him, she said. Parker just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, and intent to frame you. That's enough to arrest him tonight. Do it, Jack said. Merle clapped him on the shoulder. One down, one to go. Jack nodded, but his mind was already on the next phase. Julian Parker's arrest would panic Rosie, make her realize that her carefully constructed scheme was collapsing. And in that panic, she would make mistakes. Mistakes Jack fully intended to exploit. Chapter 6. The Confrontation. Julian Parker was arrested at his home at 3 o'clock in the morning. The FBI executed search warrants simultaneously at his office, his vacation house in Aspen, and his safe deposit boxes. By sunrise, The news was everywhere. Prominent lawyer arrested in massive embezzlement scheme. Jack watched the coverage from his garage, drinking coffee and waiting. He didn't have to wait long. At 6:30, Rosie burst into the garage, still in her pajamas, her phone clutched in her hand. "Did you see the news? Julian Parker was arrested. They're saying he stole millions from non-profit organizations. That he was running some kind of criminal enterprise." She stopped studying Jack's calm expression. "You don't seem surprised." "Should I be?" "Jack, what's going on? First, you get arrested. Now, Parker, is there some connection I'm not seeing?" Jack set down his coffee mug. This was the moment he'd been planning for. "Rosie, I need you to be very careful about what you say next." Her face palled. "What are you talking about?" "Julian Parker is naming co-conspirators. Harvey Moran is cooperating with the FBI and the walls are closing in." Jack pulled out his phone and played one of the recordings from Harvey's wire. Parker's voice filled the garage. "Rosie plays the devastated wife, helps the prosecution." Roz's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, 8 months, Jack said, his voice eerily calm. "You've been planning this for 8 months. The affair, the embezzlement, the frame-up, all of it." "Jack, I can explain." "Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain planning to send me to prison for a crime you committed. How you explain sleeping with a corrupt cop while pretending to be my wife. How you explain being willing to destroy our son's father." Tears were streaming down Roz's face. "Now, I didn't want to. You don't understand. I had debts. Horrible debts. And Parker said he could help. That it would be easy, that no one would get hurt. No one would get hurt." Jack's composure cracked slightly. "You're going to send me to federal prison. You were going to traumatize Kurt. You were going to destroy everything I've built. I'm sorry." Rosie was sobbing now. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I made terrible mistakes. I got in too deep and I didn't know how to get out. So, you decided to sacrifice me instead." Jack stood looming over her. "Here's what's going to happen now, Rosie. You're going to cooperate with the FBI. You're going to testify against Parker and Harvey. You're going to admit everything you've done. They'll send me to prison. Yes, they will. But if you cooperate, maybe you'll get a reduced sentence. Maybe you'll be out while Kurt is still young enough to know you. And if I don't cooperate," Jack's smile was cold, "then I make sure you get the maximum sentence. I have evidence you don't even know about. Recordings, documents, testimony from Louise Hughes. I have enough to bury you. So deep you'll never see sunlight again. Your choice." Rosie sank into a chair, her body shaking with sobs. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did." Jack felt no sympathy, only a hollow satisfaction. "You made your choices, Rosie. Now you get to live with the consequences. What about Kurt? Kurt will be fine. He'll live with me. He'll have a father who loves him and tells him the truth. And maybe someday, if you're lucky, he'll forgive you. Jack, please. My lawyer will be in touch about your cooperation agreement." Jack walked toward the garage door. "I suggest you get a good attorney. You're going to need one." He left her there crying in his garage and felt absolutely nothing. Chapter 7. The Dominoes. The investigation moved with the speed and force of an avalanche. Once Harvey and Rosie both agreed to cooperate, federal agents tore through Julian Parker's empire, finding evidence of not just the Veterans Fund scheme, but a dozen other frauds spanning years. Jack watched it all unfold from a distance, focusing on rebuilding his life. He'd taken extended leave from his consulting job and was spending every possible moment with Kurt, trying to shield him from the worst of the fallout while being honest about what had happened. "Is Mom go to jail?" Kurt asked one evening as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset. "Yes," Jack said. "There was no point in lying. She did some very bad things and she has to face consequences." "Did she stop loving us?" Jack pulled his son close. "I don't know, buddy. I think maybe she got lost, made some really bad choices, and couldn't find her way back." "Do you still love her?" It was a question Jack had asked himself countless times over the past weeks. "I love the person I thought she was. The person I married, but that person, I don't think she exists anymore." Kurt was quiet for a long moment. "I'm glad you found out about all of it." "If you hadn't," he didn't finish the sentence. "I know," Jack said softly. "But I did find out, and I'm never going to let anyone hurt you like that. That's a promise." 3 weeks after Julian Parker's arrest, the full scope of his operation became public. It turned out the Veterans Fund was just one of 7 nonprofit organizations he'd infiltrated and defrauded over the years. The total amount stolen exceeded $15 million. But it was a human cost that made headlines. One organization he targeted provided housing for homeless veterans. His theft had forced them to close their facility, putting dozens of vulnerable people back on the streets. Another provided medical assistance to veterans suffering from PTSD. Parker's fraud had eliminated their entire operating budget. As these stories emerged, public opinion turned viciously against everyone involved in the scheme. Harvey Moran became the face of police corruption. Rosie became the ultimate betrayer. The woman who'd stolen from the very people she was supposed to help. And Jack became something of a folk hero. The veteran who'd been targeted by a massive conspiracy and fought back using intelligence and determination rather than violence. He hated it. "You did good," Merle told him over beers one evening at a quiet bar far from the media circus. "You took down 3 major criminals and exposed a massive fraud operation. That's worth celebrating." "I didn't do it to be a hero," Jack said. "I did it because they tried to destroy my life." "Still counts." Merle raised his glass. "To justice, to survival," Jack corrected, clinking bottles. They drank in silence for a moment before Merle spoke again. "What are you going to do now?" "The FBI is offering you a consulting position. Counter-fraud investigation says your skills will be valuable." Jack had received that offer. He'd also received offers from 3 private security firms, 2 news networks wanting to interview him, and a book publisher interested in his story. He turned them all down. "I'm going to be a father," Jack said simply. "Kurt's going to need me more than ever once Rosie sentenced. Everything else, it can wait." Merle nodded approvingly. "Smart man. I try." Jack took another drink. "What about you?" "Still chasing corrupt executives for corporate clients. Actually, I've been thinking about making a change." Merle grinned. "Candace Terry offered me a position with the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Apparently, my particular skill set is in demand. You'd be good at it." High praise coming from you. They finished their beers in comfortable silence. 2 soldiers who'd survived different kinds of warfare and come out the other side. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Julian Parker's trial was a media spectacle. The prosecution had an embarrassment of riches. Harvey's recordings, Rosie's testimony, Louise Hughes's documentation, and mountains of financial evidence. Parker's defense team fought hard, but they were doomed from the start. Jack attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery and watching justice grind forward. He wanted Parker to see him. Wanted the lawyer to know that the man he tried to destroy was still standing. On the witness stand, Rosie looked small and broken. She testified in a monotone voice detailing her involvement in the scheme, her affair with Harvey, the plan to frame Jack. The jury watched her with undisguised disgust. "Mrs. Beck," the prosecutor asked, "why did you agree to participate in this scheme?" Roz's voice was barely audible. "I had gambling debts over $300,000. Parker found out and said he could make them disappear if I helped him access the Veterans Fund. I was desperate in framing your husband." "Whose idea was that?" "Parker's. He said we needed someone to take the fall if anything went wrong. He chose Jack because of his military background and security clearance. Said it would be believable that a veteran with PTSD might steal from other veterans." "Did you object to this plan?" A long pause. "No." "Why not?" "Because," Roz's voice broke. "Because by that point, I convinced myself Jack would be fine. That he was smart enough to beat the charges or that Harvey would make sure the evidence wasn't too strong. I told myself lies so I could live with what I was doing. And now I know I'm a coward and a terrible person. I destroyed my family. I betrayed the man who loved me. I stole from people who needed help, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." It was the most honest thing Jack had heard her say in months. Not that it changed anything. Harvey testified next. His police career in ruins, facing his own federal charges despite his cooperation. He described how Parker had recruited him, how the scheme had evolved, how they'd manufactured evidence against Jack. "Did you ever consider that what you were doing was wrong?" the prosecutor asked. "Every day," Harvey said flatly. "But I did anyway. That's the thing about corruption. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a series of small compromises, each one easier than the last, until you wake up one day and realize you've become everything you swore to fight against." When Louise Hughes took the stand, her testimony was damning. She described Parker's intimidation tactics in detail, producing evidence of threats and harassment that went back years. The jury looked horrified. Finally, Parker himself testified. He was polished and confident, denying everything despite the mountain of evidence against him. He portrayed himself as a victim of overzealous prosecution. Claimed Harvey and Rosie were lying to save themselves, suggested Jack had manufactured evidence out of revenge. It was a masterful performance. It was also completely ineffective. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Julian Parker's face showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but Jack saw his hands clench on the defense table. The judge remanded him to custody immediately and his federal marshals led him away. Parker's eyes found Jack in the gallery. There was no remorse in that gaze, only cold calculation, as if Parker was already planning his appeal. His next move, his eventual revenge. Jack stared back, unflinching. Let Parker plot all he wanted. He'd still spend the next 20 years in a federal prison. Outside the courthouse, Jack was mobbed by reporters. He gave him nothing. Just walked his car where Kurt was waiting with Merle. "Is it over?" Kurt asked. "Almost," Jack said. "One more thing." Chapter 9. The Aftermath. Rosie's sentencing hearing was scheduled for a month after Parker's conviction. In the interim, Jack finalized the divorce, established sole custody of Kurt, and began the slow process of rebuilding their lives. The house felt different without Rosie. Emptier, but somehow more honest. Jack and Kurt established new routines, new traditions. They started having breakfast together every morning, really talking rather than just going through the motions. Kurt joined a youth baseball league, and Jack never missed a game. Slowly, the media attention faded. Other scandals captured the public's interest. Life moved on. On the day of Roz's sentencing, Jack brought Kurt to the courthouse. The boy deserved to see the end of this chapter to understand that actions had consequences. Rosie stood before the judge, her lawyer beside her. She lost weight, looked years older than she had just months ago. When her eyes found Jack and Kurt in the gallery, she began to cry. The judge was not impressed. "Mrs. Beck, you have pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. The prosecution has recommended a sentence of 5 to 7 years in federal prison in exchange for your cooperation. However, I must consider the nature of your crimes." The judge looked down at his notes. "You stole from a fund designed to help veterans, the very people you were entrusted to serve. You participated in a scheme to frame your innocent husband for your crimes. You showed no remorse until you were caught. These are not the actions of someone who made a simple mistake. These are the actions of someone who systematically betrayed every person who trusted them." Rosie was sobbing now, her lawyer trying to steady her. "However," the judge continued, "I also note your cooperation with federal authorities, which helped bring down a larger criminal enterprise. I note your previously clean record and your expressed remorse." He paused, letting the tension build. "I hereby sentence you to 6 years in federal prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will also pay restitution in the amount of your portion of the stolen funds plus additional fines to be determined. You are remanded to custody immediately to begin serving your sentence." Rosie collapsed. Marshals had to support her as they led her away. As she passed Jack and Kurt, she whispered, "I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." Jack said nothing. Kurt squeezed his father's hand tightly. Outside the courthouse, away from reporters and cameras, father and son sat on a bench in the autumn sunshine. "How do you feel?" Jack asked. Kurt thought about it. "Sad, but also okay." "Is that weird?" "No, buddy. It's not weird at all. Do you think Mom will be different when she gets out? Better?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "I hope so. For her sake, if not for ours." "Will we visit her?" "In prison," Jack pulled his son close. "That's up to you. If you want to, we will. If you don't, that's okay, too. No pressure either way." They sat in silence for a while, watching people walk by. Lawyers and defendants, families and reporters, the endless flow of humanity through the justice system. "Dad," Kurt said eventually. "Yeah. Thank you for protecting us, for figuring everything out." Jack felt something tight in his chest loosen. "Always, kid. That's my job, protecting you. You're really good at it." "I try." Jack stood, offering his hand. "Come on, let's go home." 6 months later, Jack stood in his garage working on the motorcycle he'd never quite finished. The engine was finally assembled, the chrome polished, the leather seat restored. It was beautiful, a testament to patience and careful craftsmanship. Kurt was at a friend's house. Merle was starting his new job with the FBI next week. Neil Alvarado had completed his physical therapy and returned to active duty with the police department. Harvey's position, ironically. Louise Hughes had used her testimony and the publicity to launch a nonprofit focused on protecting whistleblowers in the charity sector. And Jack was finally breathing. The nightmares had stopped. The constant vigilance had eased. He could sleep through the night again. Could laugh at stupid jokes. Could imagine a future that looked like something other than a battlefield. His phone buzzed. A text from Candace Terry. "Coffee next week. Have a case that might interest you. Nothing too intense." Just a financial discrepancy that needs someone with your particular skills. Jack smiled. Maybe he would take that consulting job after all. Not because he needed to be a hero or because he was trying to prove something, but because he was good at it. Because he could help people. Because sometimes the skills you learned in darkness could be used to bring light. He texted back, "Send me the details." Then he returned to his motorcycle, his hands steady and sure, building something that would carry him forward into whatever came next. Because that's what survivors did. They rebuilt. They moved forward. They found ways to turn their scars into armor and their pain into purpose. Jack Beck had been tested in ways most people couldn't imagine. He'd faced betrayal, corruption, and a conspiracy designed to destroy him. And he'd won, not through violence or revenge, but through intelligence, determination, and a simple refusal to let evil people write his story. The motorcycle's engine rumbled to life, perfectly tuned. Jack smiled. It was a good sound. The sound of something fixed. The sound of new beginning. The sound of victory.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.